All right. Welcome to MythVision, everybody in the chat. I love you, and I want you to know that if nobody else has told you that yet today, you don't have to pay me to tell you that. Trust me. I just want you to know that we're going to have a little fun tonight. I have a guest joining us today. But before we do, let's get started with our new intro. We are MythVision. Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. We're going to have a live session today. We're going to be talking to somebody who left Islam, and I'll be interested to find out why. Some of the reasoning behind that. We'll probably get to taking callers as well, and they can bring their criticisms, hopefully have a friendly conversation back and forth. My special guest today is Hanney. Is it Salim?
Salim, yes.
Hanney Salim, welcome with the YouTube channel Critical Faculty. For those who don't know, go subscribe. He does a lot on science. You also do a lot in Arabic, if I'm not mistaken?
Correct, yes, I do. Egyptian Arabic, to be precise.
Egyptian Arabic, and so most of your stuff is in Egyptian Arabic, but you do have some English sessions. You've done some recordings with me, my buddy Neil, Gnostic Informant, and others. You've had Lawrence Krauss, you've had Michael Shermer, you've had Dr. Price, you've had various scholars, academics, but you're a big science fanatic. And I think you have the same mindset that I do on these things, is exploring the natural to try and discover things. And then when you don't know, you don't know. Don't pretend you do. Also, everybody consider joining the Patreon. I've been like, I can't tell you, I was just telling Hanney before we started this, how tired I really am, like actually exhausted. I've been endlessly editing videos. All of these are on the Patreon for the supporters who help me. There's so much. This is honestly one of my favorite recordings I've done ever, because it helped me solve a problem that I've been searching for a couple years on. It's extremely complex, and you really just got to watch the video to get the point and the gist we're going into. But lots of content that has not made it to the public. Consider joining the Patreon. It does help me do what I'm doing, and I'm working my you-know-what off to try and do that. And also, hey, Gnostic Informant super chatted. Neil with Gnostic Informant also helps me edit my videos. I just recently started helping him with his thumbnails here and there. So we're kind of a tit-for-tat, sister-brother channel, looking out for each other. We got the three stooges right here, me, Hanney, and Neil right here in the chat as we speak. Thanks for that super chat, Neil. I really appreciate that. Critical Faculty is giving out free stuff if you subscribe now.
He's setting me up.
Yeah, he's setting him up. Hey, what's up, Black Angel? So many people here. Thank you so much. Vaguely Agnostic, my friend. Let's see. Got it. Everybody in the chat, thanks so much. Don't forget to like the video. It helps us keep doing what we're doing. YouTube can take a closer look to us. But Hanney, let's dive into the deep end. We talked about maybe mentioning the Satanic Verses. We might mention that as we go, but a whole devoted show to that. You're no expert, but about these things as someone who is Muslim. So the question I have for you is just a generic basic one. There's no, I guess you'd say, right, it might be wrong answers if it's a Muslim watching, because they're going to go, that's not good enough excuse to not be Muslim anymore. But why did you, first we need to know about your background as a Muslim. How serious were you? What kind were you? All of that. And then why did you leave? And then we'll open up the conversation as time goes by for callers.
It was actually two for the price of one for me, because my father was an Egyptian Muslim, and my mother was Irish Catholic. So I lived two religions at the same time. But my father was an atheist, anyway. But culture Muslim. My mother was sort of deist, spiritual, Catholic, non-practicing religious person. With kind of weird combination. She wasn't really fussed, but she one of those cultural Christians rather than a practicing one. So I grew up in a household that weren't too fussed about religion, to be honest. So I didn't have any traumas.
Did you specifically take it seriously at any point in your life?
Yes. So, and unlike everybody else, because the way I was brought up to, well, you kind of follow the father, in your birth certificate. And I was born in Egypt, but we traveled because my father used to work as a diplomat. So we traveled and lived in so many countries growing up. I was under no pressure to practice any religion. I could have gone into Christianity or Judaism if I wanted to. We were that kind of household. But because they were not really, they were like apathetic towards religion, I took it upon myself to say, well, being rebellious, I wanted to be, I want to do something different than my own parents. So I actually got religious at the age of 16, and I practice Islam. So 5 prayers a day, going to the mosque, reading the Quran, and I was interested in reading a lot. And within a year, I think I figured things out pretty quickly. And I've gone back to my dad with my tail between my legs.
So what happened to you? You took it kind of seriously, but I mean, someone who's like, no, you weren't a Muslim from the time you were born to the time you left. But since you weren't, in comparison to someone like that, you wouldn't say, okay, I was as serious as they were, that I did this for years and years and years. But when you got into it, you really were trying to give it your all. What happened that made you leave?
Yeah, there is a saying in Arabic that says you don't have to drink the whole ocean to know it's salty. So I had to sip, and I realized straight away, bloody hell, that's pretty salty.
What happened?
So, well, I've, within a year, I've started reading the Quran, and I've always been a logical person. I've always been into science. And when reading the Quran verses, and I saw many problems vary from the moral to the scientific, I could not believe anymore that this could have been the words of God. Just no way. It started with that, and but then I got into Christianity, for another 6 months later, just to figure things out and read the Jesus story from the Bible, because it differs in Islam slightly. And realize that again, that's BS. And from that point, kind of got into Spinoza's God for another year or so, and by the age of 19, I was completely out.
Wow, took me a while to hit my growth spurt. So that's interesting. Let's talk about a few things that maybe you found problems with in Islam. That obviously Islam would mean the Quran, because there's various forms of it. There's Quranists who say they love to go in, and I mean, you gotta love them. They're trying, but they come into my chat, right, and they'll say stuff like this: "D, that guy doesn't represent Islam. He's not really a Muslim. Like, he's not really accurate. He's a Taliban or something, or they call each other Taliban more than anybody, it seems." And they'll say, like, D, they don't understand. It's only the Quran, so they're trying to protect the Quran. Then you have others who are like, no, come on, the Hadith plays a significant role. And then some who say, like, many of the Hadith, especially if we were to visit, say, the Taliban in actually Afghanistan, they would probably go and find plenty of these Hadith that support a more radical view of Islam. So my question is, what were the problems that your critical thinking made you realize, yeah, this is salty, I'm not drinking anymore?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to give people the idea about the Egyptian Muslims. So Egyptians are mostly Sunni. There's about 10% to 12% of Egyptians are Coptic Orthodox Christians. Remember, Egypt was Coptic, was all Christian before the invasion of the Arabs and the Muslims, and it was converted later on. So there's still that 12% of Coptic Egyptians are there. Egyptians mostly Sunni Muslim, which mean it's the Quran plus the Sunnah and Hadith. These are, you wouldn't know how to pray in Islam unless you refer to the Sunnah. There are actually no instructions in the Quran. There are a lot of things that are not mentioned in the Quran that is sort of being completed by the Hadith or Sunnah. However, there is a big movement right now, or a big push for Quran only Muslims, thinking that the Hadith is full of problems and myths, and therefore maybe by sticking to the Quran will save the graces of the Islam, because it sounds a lot more reasonable, but not really, because when you dig deep, I can find so many holes in the Quran. I'll start with some of the moral situations and the way women are looked at. You don't need to be a woman to understand that half of the society you live in is being hindered, and therefore yourself. Honestly, Christopher Hitchens once said it. The way to raise the bar in humanity is to empower women. Half of the world's population, right there. So a woman can only be half of a man in terms of witness, half of the inheritance, and Muslim will argue that that's not true. No, it is true. When you equate the same relationship, so sister, brother, uncle, because they will always sort of play the trick and say, well, the sister will get more than a distant uncle, of course, and saying all that because it's not because she's a female, it's because of the ranking in the relation rather. So, but if you compare apples for apples, male inherit twice that of a woman. I didn't think that was really nice. And there is a verse that talks about beating of women. If you're a woman, if you fear, not if your woman disobeys you, if you fear that your woman would disobey you, you may first preach to them, then desert them in bed, and the third option is to beat them. Biktal, one of the translators of the Quran, he was quite embarrassed, so he had between brackets lightly, even though the word lightly wasn't there.
Wow. That's interesting. So I can tell that you're very far from where you were. And I'm sure a lot of Muslims who might watch might be like, this guy, he's like distant from what it's like to think like a Muslim and to be in that worldview. Because typically what we do is we defend our positions, and you're speaking you're outright speaking against it and stuff. So they're probably not really able to comprehend that and get where you're coming from. What would you say was one of the biggest things? Was it the women thing? What was it, a combination of things over time that you just started to develop? And here, let me ask you, as someone who was coming out of this, like me with Christianity, I didn't really look for the strongest arguments against my position and actually tried to listen to them. I was actually trying to find, how can I keep my position true? And how do I make sure these arguments that I come up with are strong enough to keep it true? That's all I wanted to do. I didn't really want to find out if it was true. Yeah. I believed it was true, and I wanted to verify that it was true by finding arguments for it. How did you feel about that?
And look, that's why there is no one size fits all. I think everybody's stories and everybody's background plays a big role. And because religion wasn't traumatic for me, I didn't have an issue growing up. There was no pressure from society. I lived sort of abroad. My parents didn't push me around choosing a religion. So I was really under no obligation. I had other things to fall back on because my worldview was filled with other things, sport and bits and pieces. So it was not as big. So I was kind of emotionally detached. It's almost I got into it as a project to verify the situation. And once I've objectively found out that it couldn't possibly be from a god, I wasn't upset. I wasn't upset. It's almost like I figured something new out. Like it's almost like you are under misapprehension, and you sort of correct yourself. And so I wasn't emotionally invested in the idea so much that it sort of ruined me leaving it. And I wasn't so attached that I would try to use my biases. I didn't have a bias really. I wanted to know for real, and I continue to have this attitude even with science. I actually double doubt when there's an idea that comes across that tickles my fancy, because it means I'm ready to adopt it without much verification. So as soon as I see something that is so nice and so appealing to me, I actually have to look twice, not once. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to send this out there for everybody to know. If you're Muslim or ex-Muslim, I'd be interested in having you come on to ask a question or make a statement. And then I'm going to be very limiting on how long we allow this to go, since last time with the apostate prophet, it went on and on with one of the callers, and I was like, let's try to limit this. So everybody, welcome in the chat. Thank you so much for being patient. But I'm going to go ahead and pin that, actually. Let me pop that up here. Please bear with me. But let me see. Why did you leave Islam? Here we go. All right. Pin. All right. I'm opening it up to more than just Muslims today. I really, would be interested in hearing even ex-Muslims who might have a statement or something like that. That'll be something that I'd be happy to have. But one at a time, if you want, feel free to join in. So, okay, now that I have it pinned and it's available, if people are interested in joining in, and maybe they are wanting to be critical or they want to challenge you on something or whatever, they can feel free to do so. So what are some of the problems with the Satanic Verses that you found in particular? Because it's obviously something I'd love to get an expert on, but I'm going to be honest with you. I have spoken to some of the experts, and they're very cautious. It's not that they don't know this stuff inside and out and probably couldn't do some unbelievable stuff if they really wanted to against apologetics in the field of Islam, or like academics do with Christianity and others. But I really think that there is a fear of ruining their reputation and getting a bunch of people coming after them in terms of verbally and emails, and you never know, calling up their work. Who knows what they might try to do because they say something about the Satanic Verses. Whereas you got to get people that are non-academics to come on and actually say stuff about this, because it's almost like, can you draw me a picture of Muhammad? No, I cannot. I'm not asking you to draw like a derogatory with a bomb on his head or something, like the pictures that have caused people to kill people over. Just a picture. People will not do it. A lot of them will not do it at all. And the reason is they know that Muslims will be ticked off about it.
Yeah.
What about the Satanic Verses that you can tell us?
Well, I view the Satanic Verses as something that is that's been inserted after the rise of Islam. So to be completely unbiased, because I'm not going to be one of those people that are going to have cheap digs at Islam not for the right reasons. So right. Most probably has been inserted by Al-Waqidi and Al-Tabari. These are people who lived way after the rise of Islam. Al-Tabari was like 8th century. So this is a story that's been told. So it's not in the Quran. It's not in the Hadith, right? And it's a story about Muhammad being inspired, some new Quranic verses by the angel Gabriel, which pays tribute to the three gods of Mecca pre-Islam. So Manat, Uzza, and Hubal. And these three were obviously, we're talking about idols here. And later on, Muhammad comes to withdraw these verses, saying, sorry, actually that wasn't Gabriel. Looks like it might have been Lucifer or something, and that's why it's called Satanic Verses. The book was written in 1988 by one of Christopher Hitchens' best friends, Salman Rushdie. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a fatwa issued against him. Fatwa is an Islamic advice, and it can vary from marrying people all the way to being killed. And I think Khomeini of Iran has issued the fatwa to have him killed if possible because of that book. So it's, to me, it sits like almost like not as bad as Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, because that's completely hoax. It's a modern day hoax. It's a hoax, but it's slightly older. But there's no reference to it in Quran or Hadith or Sunnah, to be fair. However, it shows to you, as somebody who's receiving the religion in the 21st century, how problematic stories are. The amount, what else has been added? What else has been added? The Sunnah, considering the second reference in Islam, in all of Islam, Sunnah and Hadith, these were written by Bukhari and Muslim, and we're talking about 2 centuries later. The guy's completely divorced from the situation. He's never seen Muhammad. He's never spoken with him. How could he know what he said? But they say, well, there are people who would have inherited the story and kept telling it. And we only need to play the Chinese whisper or telephone, I think in America it's called, in modern day, and just have 100 kids piled up, give them one phrase and a body animation and ask them to repeat them, and look at the end of the queue, what's going to happen. So imagine 200 years of time, different geographical locations, plus, and we're here assuming that people have the best of intentions. Add a couple of bad intentions and political agendas, and you've got yourself a completely different story from the original one.
No, that's really well put. I agree with you. Hold on, I've got some... trying to close out. Where is the noise coming from? Okay, here we go. All right, hanging up on that. Sorry. We got a super chat from Constellation Pegasus. Thank you so much, my friend. Do Muslims hate you for leaving?
It depends. I still have lots of Muslim friends, and I think people are people. I think religion is just an added layer. Good people are always going to be good people. I think Steven Weinberg said that before. Bad people will always be bad people, but you just need to add religion for good people to do bad things. So, yeah, most Muslim people who know me very well, because my way of criticizing Islam is quite subtle. I don't dwell too much on religion, actually, on my channel, where science might intersect religion. I point out, but I don't go out of my way to make people uncomfortable. Really, it's not my style, not my game, and that's why people really leave religion and keep talking about religion for years. And all what I'm trying to say to them: please move on. There is so much to discover in this world. There's evolution, and there's the cosmology, and there's fantastic stuff to get into.
I agree. Thank you so much. And Constellations, thanks again, my friend. He says, it takes guts to leave religion. I spent thousands of dollars to prove what I was learning about Jehovah's Witnesses was true. It is traumatic.
It can be quite traumatic for sure. It's a worldview. That's why religion is so strong. It takes a natural biological bias, trusting your elders, trusting your parents and your society, because you got to do that. Otherwise, you don't get along in life by not trusting your parents, teaching you how to do things. And you open up, you trust your society, you trust your parents, and you, as soon as anything start making you doubt that, you try to protect it with everything you've got. I completely understand that.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Quick question from Black Angel. I noticed your question and it made me really want to ask, would he visit Egypt as an open ex-Muslim YouTuber?
I've done so. Yeah, I've been doing so. I hold multiple passports. So I'm an Irish citizen as well. I'm Australian and New Zealander. So I do have 4 passports. So they can try, but I'll fight it for sure. But I've been going, not since the last couple of years because of the pandemic, but I'm planning to go and I'm gonna hold my, um, you know, my
Interesting.
end of the bargain.
Okay. Now back, since we're gonna grant the Satanic Verses are later, and we're going to assume the Quran comes earlier, which I do think is the case.
Yes.
What do you do with those passages? Did you come across the clear common sources that we see, for example, in the sleeping, with the monks sleeping in the cave? You have these men sleeping in the cave. They wake up hundreds of years later. Did you find that and go, this seems to be taken from earlier sources? Did those things come on your radar, or you just, what path
Yes.
did you
Yeah.
take?
But you see, that was explained quite logically. To me, it wasn't problematic because Quran claims to be from the same source of the God of the Bible. And therefore, if these stories were mentioned before, it would actually make it more consistent that it is making references to stories that have been told before. But sometimes Islam does something very clever. It's trying to retell the story in the right narrative because within the Muslim faith, it's believed that the Torah and the Gospel, the Bible, have been changed over.
Right.
Right. And Muslims have a very strange understanding of the Torah and the Bible. They actually believe that these two books were revealed intact, like exactly like the Quran, to Jesus and Moses through Gabriel as written, literally. They don't understand. Even the Jews and Muslims, Jews and Christians don't believe that. They understand it was sort of the Holy Spirit. I think apart from even the 5 books of Moses, still not inspired by God himself. I think it's only the 10 Commandments is the direct inspiration by God with his
Right.
fingers, writing through his fingers. But everything else is written by men. Yeah, they might have been divinely inspired, but they are still men writing what they understood to be true.
Got a couple super chats, and we have someone down in the chat. I'll bring you on in just a moment here. Jake E. Pake, thank you so much for the super chat, my friend. You are wearing too much blue. It's weird. You look like the sea or the sky on a sunny day. Derek looks like a Baldwin brother. Thank you so much for the super chat. And then Happy Camper says, where do you see Islam going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, that's a very short period in history for anything to change. I think the push will continue. I think this internet revolution, we're going to continue to push the boundaries in a lot of things, not just religion. And the world is opened up now, so you'll have people from different cultures, different nationalities discussing all sort of things, and people have access to this information. There will be a lot of information, and there'll be a lot of misinformation. That is the tax to pay for freedom of expression here. But it's going to be our mission to decipher the information and overcome our biases and make sure that what we hold to be true is empirically true. I don't think much will happen in the next 5 to 10 years other than more voices. This is going to be highlighted. People are no longer going to be hiding behind old stories. They will have to come to apologize and advocate. And that's brilliant time because you're going to have to prove things, and religion is going to be under severe scrutiny.
All right, one more here. Constellation Pegasus is back. Thank you so much. One thing about Islam culture is the great stories. One of my favorite all-time books is Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves and 9 Other Tales. Lovely book. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate that super chat. Yeah, I must admit I'm reading a book right now. I read a book, Leslie Hazelton, After the Prophet, and it's about the Shiite Sunni split. And it was unbelievable hearing the story. I said, this should be on Netflix, like for real. Now, I imagine because it's like, someone does a video on Jesus or something and it goes on Netflix, there's a big uproar, especially when people recently made Jesus gay in one of the shows or something like that. It pissed everybody off who's a fundamentalist. But seriously, the show of like what happened after he died, and then the issue between Ali and his I'm having my brain's trying to think.
So you're talking the Shia Sunni conflict?
Yeah, with Ali
Yeah.
and the other 4 caliphs and everything that
So
happened.
Omar, yeah.
Yeah, but even his favorite wife,
Aisha.
Yeah, there's this battle, the camel, the red camel
Correct.
battle
Yeah.
of the first Civil War. And I mean, just hearing what happened between them, oh, the book, she did so good. Like, and how much of it really happened, how much of that was historical, and how much of it is just part of the stories.
Oh, that is solid. That is sorry. I'm going to tell you some weird stories to at some point where you will have to raise the eyebrows of people, because when Muhammad was dying, weird stuff were happening, and actually they are in the Hadith and the Sahih of Muslim and Bukhari suggest that people around Muhammad when he was dying, they had no interest in Quran or religion or spirituality. It was all about power at that point. Just on the story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, it's obvious this is an Arabic story, but I've actually stopped at it to think about something. I'm not sure if you'll find the same. So this is the open sesame thing. Where it's taken from. So there are 40 thieves that used to steal people's money and hide them in a cave. And that cave was blocked by a secret door, and you have to utter a magic word, open sesame, for it to open. Ali Baba figures out the trick after saying few words, but eventually got it right. But he's depicted as a good man, a lovely man, a beautiful man, but he actually takes the money, and because he's a lovely man, it's okay. He never returned the money to anyone. So because we were told he was a good guy, he just done exactly the same thing as the 40 thieves. He kept the money for himself. How is he righteous?
But yeah, because he said he's a good guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. All right, I'm going to bring our guest on here. Just going to set a timer because don't want to get stuck too long. If things go smooth and it seems like things are going on the right path, then I'd be happy to continue. But let's play it by ear. Welcome to MythVision, my friend. Intertextuality. All right. Well, that didn't work out so well. Let's see. Oh, that was a statement. Intertextuality, Arabic Bible in the 7th century. So that was the statement that they were just trying to make. Intertextuality, like wanting us to discuss intertextuality, I believe, an Arabic Bible in the 7th century. So I guess the Arabic Bible is referring to the Jews and the Christians' book. And then intertextuality is this connection between the two. So 2 things I thought were interesting. Well, first I want to just get into intertextuality. Let's just go there for a second, because we brought up the whole sleeping cave scenario, which we find in monk stories of Christianity down into, I believe, the 3rd, 4th century AD. So a couple hundred years before the Quran shows up, there are stories like this. But there are other stories that I thought are interesting, and that's one is the infancy gospels. That we find Jesus turning clay birds into living birds. And you see this in the Quran. It's not verbatim. Nothing usually is verbatim. It has its own spin, but it definitely seems to be picked up from this notion. What are your thoughts about the whole intertextuality scenario? And are there other examples you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, well, you see, there were Christians in the Gulf area around Islam, especially and a lot of Jews as well in that area, and they seem to be those sort of Nestorian Christians who believed in a certain narrative, and some of them were believed that Jesus was just a prophet, exactly like the Islamic narrative. I believe it was the Gospel of Thomas, and there's a lot of infancy Gospels that were never canonized and never added as an official Bible. And Islam borrow a lot from these stories. Even in the story of Jesus and Mary and Joseph going to Egypt and fleeing Herod persecution. I think it was mentioned in Matthew. And there's obviously a conversation about it in the Quran as well. So Quran is choosing to narrate certain stories that were not in the official Bibles, but were in gospels that were circulated especially in the Arabic area, where they have a slightly different theology, or a different theology than that in Jerusalem. Even there's one verse in the Quran where Jesus speaks as a baby, had a full speech.
Yeah, there's the infancy gospel connection, dual Quran, I believe it is, the Alexander romance with Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
And that stuff interests me. I get into that stuff as someone who doesn't believe, and I love finding out how clever and these narratives take their own spins and stuff. And it's like I do the same thing with Christianity, and there are certain fundamentalist Christians, for example, who cannot stand. They're like, you just need to leave it all alone. Stop worrying about it at all. And it's like they want to monopolize what you can and cannot say or talk about, or you can't look into this. You have to believe it full-fledged, literally, or else. What are your thoughts about the whole the Bible and the gospel, as they would call it, were corrupted? What are your thoughts about that when we have no actual text to show what the non-corrupted version is?
Exactly. It's a wild claim, and Islam, but it's very clever from Islam, because you're going to notice one trend here. Each of the three of the brother Karamazov, the three Abrahamic religions, each of them believe in the one before, but claims to be the last. So, according to Judaism, that's it. You're just waiting for the Messiah, and that's it. There will be the chosen and few to survive the onslaught of gods. But they're still waiting for their Messiah, who is just a king. Nothing to do with the way we perceive a Messiah to be. He was just somebody from an offspring of David, who's going to bring the kingdom of God, and he's going to be a strong king. That's why they rejected Jesus.
Yeah,
but for Christianity,
rule the world from Jerusalem, and the nations will bring their wealth in, and everyone will bend the knee, realizing this God and this nation rules the world. Christianity, same thing, totally different narrative, totally different expectations, and it evolved because the failed apocalypse turned it into this thing they're still waiting on.
Yeah. The same with Christianity. So Christianity comes along and saying, hold on, there's a new covenant here. Forget about the past, while still contradicting. Sometimes Jesus would be found to say, hey, I have not come to contradict the law, but yet you've been told, and I'm telling you, but there's a new covenant here where you accept Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior, and that'll be it. And obviously Paul opens it up to the Gentiles, and it's the world's religion, and that's it. That will be it. Islam comes along, but Christianity believes in the Old Testament because you need a foundation. Islam does the same thing. It says, well, I come from the same source, guys. God of Abraham, just to get some credibility going. But hold on a second here. But I'm the seal of the old prophets. I'm the last word. And the other two were not completely pure. Things have gone wrong, and we're here. But don't worry, we're here to help you.
Yeah, and so we're the last ones too, by the way.
Yeah, but we still had Mormonism coming after Christianity, and we had Baha'i.
Yeah, I was about to say, because they use Islam too.
Yes.
There's a lot there. So Jurumba said, dual Quran isn't Alexander the Great. The statement is baseless. Well, if its statement is baseless, I don't know why academics are saying that. Yeah, I don't know why academics do say that, other than the argument that I hear is Cyrus the Great, which still was not a believer in was not a believer in the God of the Bible, was a Persian, and therefore would have Ahura Mazda and the Persian pantheon, their whole belief system. So either way you chop it up, you're going to run into a problem. But I think Muslims oftentimes want to run from the whole Alexander thing because, with Cyrus, you don't have him in his accounts potentially sleeping with boys. Okay. You don't have him doing things that Islam would be like, absolutely not. But Alexander the Great's military victory was so fascinating that I could see in the conquest era of the 7th century when everyone is fighting and cutting each other's heads off, and here Islam's starting to rise to fame in terms of conquering over the next century or two. I could see Alexander's example historically as a warrior being something that you would want to admonish and cherish and say, that guy had to have God on his side. How did he accomplish so much? How did he make it all the way to India and this and this and that? But when you actually look at the sources, like I would go to Persian sources to find out what this Persian king had to say, while taking with a grain of salt any other sources, especially biblical ones, to come to the conclusion. I definitely wouldn't trust the 7th century AD Islamic source to tell me what a 5th century BC king of Persia did or didn't do. So at the end of the day, either that or they'll divorce it completely from somebody. I don't know. I don't know. But I think mostly it's fundamentalist Muslims who are trying to get around this problem. And the Muslims of the Middle Ages had no problem with saying this was Alexander the Great. They were cool with it. In early Islam, I heard also a lot of Christians that were like Syriac Christians. They held official positions inside the government of the rising kingdom. Like Christians were marrying Muslims and Muslims were marrying Christians and Jews and vice versa. Like it wasn't what fundamentalism ended up becoming within Islam. There was so much that has developed. And the more I study the scholars and academics, what we see today on the internet with like these, what I guess what people call them Dawa people and whatnot, Ali Dawa and these other people, Muhammad Hijab, they're more radical fundamentalist. And they're not really like practicing this stuff like the medieval Islamist and stuff. So that's from what I understand.
On the Zulkarnain issue, I tend to lean toward Alexander the Great, and I agree with you. The problem still remains if it's either. I'm asking people to apply the rules of logic here. If the Quran is talking about a great king, and the Zulkarnain means the two horns, so he's wearing some sort of a helmet, and Alexander the Great was renowned for that. But here's where the trick is. They don't need to be followers of El or Allah or anyone. It's very similar to modern day situation where you have your favorite sports person who's got Jamaican background and he's playing for the United States, and you're happy to be a Jamaican and say, well, he's Jamaican. You claim great people to be in the same line as you because you want to get credibility. And that's what Islam does. Islam does sometimes say, well, we're all Muslims. Didn't you know we're all Muslims? Abraham was a Muslim. Adam was a Muslim.
Yeah.
So Alexander was a Muslim. What's the problem here? Anybody who seems to be victorious and strong and whatever, I'm going to claim him to be one of my own, and it's nice and easy to claim that because it's a natural thing. It's like a biological inbuilt. God has actually put His name within us, and the one God is Allah, and therefore everybody's a Muslim in a way, and they might be led astray at some point, and they come back or stay that way.
Interesting. Thank you. Constellation, thank you for the super chat again. Did Islam have anything to do with offering children to Baal the way the Hebrews used to, or did Baal die out before Muhammad? So I would say that's old. Yeah, Baal would be way back.
Yeah. But Baal is supposed to be related more to the Yahweh and El situation, and he's supposed to be sort of an evil God, and there's a battle going on. He gets killed, I believe, by is it Ashra or one of the goddess killed Baal?
The wife of El, I believe
it's Ashra. I think.
I don't think it was Ashra. I thought it was the other.
Oh, the evil one, the one that is like really badass. Yeah,
hardcore. Yeah, I can't remember her name, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's
way before. Died out. Yeah, or
at
least it wasn't. Sorry.
Yeah, and there was no mention of child sacrifice. However, Islam, the closest thing Islam makes a reference to an old Arabic habit of families bearing their female children. Because of issues like poverty and women are not as worth as men because men can actually be used to work in as shepherds or help the family, so they actually were buried them alive. And Islam came along to abolish that habit and claims it to be it was actually quite pandemic in the Arab world. But again, it doesn't stand the scrutiny of logic, because if the female population is always 50-50 throughout all history, it might be 49-51 in wars or whatever, but it always stays the same. How do you get then to have 4 wives at some point if all these girls were buried alive? It's crazy.
Yeah, I've heard about that too. And how true was that? A lot of scholars are wondering, like, is that even true? So A, B, D, G, and I, thank you for asking a question. They've been asking this a lot here. Why are there words in the Quran once with, and I don't speak Arabic, so can you understand this?
Yeah, well, you see, there's a problem in the Quran. The Quran, when it first came out and gathered, it didn't have any punctuations or dotting. And dotting a letter can change the meaning of the word completely.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a huge debate. Right. So you can actually change a complete word by putting the different dots. So it was unpunctuated and it didn't have the dots like the umlauts in the German language. It will change the word. And he's a gentleman that comes a lot to my podcast, and he's so hang up on that that he cannot say anything else. He's so hang up on that.
Same thing.
On the same thing. And my advice to him is to move on from that, because it's futile. We will never know. But what I can tell you is the oldest of the Quranic texts didn't have punctuation and didn't even have these 2 letters. The 2 letters he's referring to, they were not dotted, and therefore we wouldn't know. That happens.
What is the point behind these words? What is the context that he's trying to get at? What's so special about this point he's bringing up?
He's trying to say that the original word of Quran did not have that first letter, and it has the open T. It's called an open T, but it's honestly it's a futile subject that doesn't lead you to any benefit in life or elsewhere. It doesn't have any epistemology behind it. Doesn't do anything. But there are a few people who are hang up on that in the Islamic world, and I never understood it. It's so superfluous.
Yeah, I don't know the context. I don't know what the argument is or what they're trying to get at. You know what I mean?
He's trying to. He's a Muslim, and he thinks the word of God has been. So he believes the Quran was changed in a way by modern people by changing these letters. So even the Quran doesn't even stand the scrutiny of the alteration of the word by Muslims themselves.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, there's just, I don't even know. I know what it's like to be trapped in the thinking I thinking this is right and I got to make it right. And I see that a lot, man. I did not know it was going to be that. It is really a lot as I've started delving into Islam. Like, there's a lot of people that just, it's presuppositionalism is what it is. This is true. And I know it's true. And Derek, I'm going to keep on until you see that it's true.
But it drives me insane, Derek. The people hang up on that. And James Webb Telescope is taking pictures of like clear as the daylight of things. And there are people who are still hang up on these things. And we're just covering. But it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, when you're, that's, I mean, it's an interesting analogy that you're painting. It's just, it's a much bigger thing that we're doing now than what we were once doing in the deserts and in the Middle East and all over the world. We're moving forward and hoping that more people will start to do that with us. But there's a lot of people who come in and they want to challenge and things like that. They want me to debate. They're like, hey, I want you to debate. I'm not an expert, number one, in Islam. Number two, I'm not a debater. I'm just not. I'll host things. I'll have conversations with people, things like that. But yeah, I definitely wanted to know what science has led you in, like what kind of issues scientifically, because you are the science guy when it comes to these things. You have Lawrence Krauss on almost every other day. Not really, but let me get the super chat, and then I want to find out some scientific errors, issues that you saw and you couldn't fit them in. Paul Cherry, thank you for that super chat. Hey, the Syro-Aramaic reading of the Quran, a contribution to the decoding of the language of the Quran hardcover. March 15th, 2007 by Christopher Luxemburg. Author is very good. Thank you for the super chat. Syro-Aramaic. So is this is that suggestion that there's a Aramaic undertone to the Quran, I think, or
Yeah, the word Quran itself is actually not Arabic. So the one of the claims of the Quran, I've actually read. I'm very familiar with the Christopher Luxemburg analogy, and there's a little bit of a conspiracy stuff going on there because Mecca is never been Mecca. Islam was never revealed in the area of Saudi Arabia, modern day Saudi Arabia, but Petra, Jordan. And there are a lot of things that were manufactured later on. So it's almost a mythicist position of the Quran and Muhammad, but not exactly. There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of conspiracy going on there. So I don't. He would be the Robert Price of the Muslim world, sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, but most of academics will say no, that's not true.
Right.
But the word Quran is not an Arabic word. It's taken from a Syrian word called Koreana, and it's true. The Quran claims to be in pure Arabic, but there are a lot of words that are not of Arabic origin. There are some Hebrew words. There's some Persian words. There's some Syrian words, Aramaic words. So it's not purely in Arabic, even though it makes that blatant claim. It actually says in one of the verses that this is the pure Arabic.
I've heard that the tribe that Muhammad was from. This is from
Quraysh.
One of the Quraysh tribe. That one of the academics who's a linguistic expert said that the Quran was written in this type of dialect, which meant you could tell originally this came from a Quraysh type tribe. And then, of course, it becomes the universal. But really, if you don't read it with that dialect, you won't really get some of the points in it. He said there's a lot more behind the language as to why one needs to consider it. But Paul, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate the love.
And Derek, that's one of the reasons I lost all faith in the Abrahamic God, because of that. The insistence in revealing his words in language, and not just the language, in a language, in a certain dialect, in one tribe, in one area in the world, while giving Lucifer, his adversary, the better way of communicating with humans through
any and every and.
Yeah, he can speak to you in your accent, in your dialect, with your own thoughts, direct download into your own thoughts. But God chooses the most inferior way of communicating with people, in almost a dead language, and you will have to keep twisting words to mean what needs to mean in the 21st century.
Yeah, wow, thank you for that. Constellation Pegasus. So the Quran has textual problems the way Judaism can attack and rip apart the New Testament?
You mean like as in, can you elaborate a little bit on the textual problems, like as in issues of interpretation or different versions of them? If you can maybe elaborate a little bit.
I'll keep an eye out on Constellation. We do have someone down in the chat. Let me get this next super chat, and then we'll bring them on. Crawford Fulton King, thank you so much for the super chat. Do some sects of Islam, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, refuse surgery to save life? Are there versions of Islam that are against like medical treatments and things, or
no? Not that I'm aware of.
Like alcohol, yeah, but not like pro-medical treatment, right?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, but there are the sort of the layman sort of attitude towards, a prayer to God is better than going to a doctor, sort of thing. And that's probably because they cannot afford a doctor. So that's how they sort of, they're lamenting the situation and resort to faith, because unfortunately they don't deserve, they cannot afford a doctor's bill. But we don't have a significant sect that will believe in that.
Thank you for that. Constellation was saying, and thanks for the super chat, man. Problems with contradictions. A
contradiction. Oh, it's filled with it. Of course. The Quran is written in two different forms, one before the migration and one after the migration. One is very placid and very cute and nice. And this is when Muslims for the first 10 years were down to tens of people. So we're talking, I think, 70 or 80 people before they had an army. And then you get and this is where you get the concept of abrogation, where God says that he can actually change one law for another. And then you end up with the more aggressive tone of the Quran after the migration and after Muhammad has his own army now, and he can actually start dictating the rules of engagement. Yeah, so it does contradict itself in a way. I don't understand. I mean, this is a position where they say, well, you mortals, everything is relative to you. You keep changing your science, you keep changing your morals. While God is fixed. God is bloody fixed, because morals are morals, and killing a child and boiling it in its mother's milk, borrowing a biblical term here, is horrible all the time. Yet their own God keeps changing his mind throughout the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran. But only he can do that. And when he does that, it's not relativistic. It's just God, because God can do anything, and it's all right.
All right. I was going to bring Z on, but Z just left. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Crawford Fulton King, thank you so much for that super chat. Again, I'm in the UK. I can easily put my misassumption to Islamophobia here.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand exactly.
Same here.
Help me out here, Crawford. Trying to interpret you. Z's back. Z, just hold on. I'm going to bring you on in just a second, and let me just see what Crawford's trying to say. I think I can easily put my misassumption to Islamophobia here. I'm in the UK. I don't know if he's saying that this is Islamophobia or what.
No, he's saying I can't put my misassumption. So he's saying his misassumption might be misinterpreted as
regarding the refusal of surgery. That's what he meant. Okay. I was just wondering, because I'm sure that, some people will think you're being critical.
I still don't understand what's Islamophobia to do with anything with that concept. Islamophobia is a made up word, and it gives Sam Harris itchy skin. He hates it because he thinks, and Christopher Hitchens used to hate it too, because a phobia is an illogical fear, and unfortunately, some Muslims or some Islamic tendencies can cast terror in people's hearts, especially if you board a plane and you see a bearded man reciting the Quran in front of you, and you will start to get worried. And I'm not being phobic here, but people will actually will start to go, what the hell's going on? So because of its track history, unfortunately.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much for that, my friend. Let me bring on Z here. Z, how are you? Welcome to MythVision. You're live on MythVision, Z. All right. No response. Well, we'll keep going then.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll keep going. Scientific issues. This is what we were going to bring up, and I wanted to get your personal thought. What would you say are some of the big scientific problems, being you're a science guy?
One that stands out, there are verses in the Quran where it talks about the sun has a resting place, and it's a muddy sort of lake, which is a funny one. And it sort of connects that with the sunrise and sunset. Very similar to the Joshua situation, where God wants to prolong the day and holds on to the sun, so the sun wouldn't set. So the day would be longer for Joshua to win the battle. And it's very similar in the Quran, but it goes one step further by claiming that the sun actually sits in one place at the very end. It's like the terminus, the final in a bus station sort of situation. But if the God of the Bible, be it Allah or Yahweh, would understand a bit of cosmology, would understand it's nothing to do the day and light has nothing to do with the movement of the sun, but the rotation of Earth around its own axis. And it would have been a cool thing to know if God said that this is the case. It would actually tell me, how would he know that sort of thing? It will actually make me sort of wonder. So that one stood out for me. And it's the funny thing, both the Old Testament and the Quran borrow from older knowledge of the dome. The glass dome, you probably heard it from so many scholars you bring to your podcast, of the flat earth, the dome, the windows, the rain falling from the windows. And this is where you end up with the next verse that's talking about the sky is erected with pillars, invisible pillars, as if it's a thing, as if the heaven is a thing that needs to be erected, and using pillars, which is obviously a very ancient knowledge.
Yeah, and like I have nothing wrong to say about people in ancient world having a certain cosmology. It does tell you it's dated, though. And if this is revelation from something that is beyond, you would think if it's the one dictating this text, it would get these absolutely correct. But then the response to me would be, Derek, you don't know a thing. You don't speak Arabic. You don't know the language. And it's allegory or it's a metaphor. It's not literal. So now language is obviously, language can mean almost anything. You can just bend it because, it doesn't mean what it means. And then therefore God speaks poetically. He's like Shakespeare in the sky, and you just either know it or you don't know it. And if you don't have a guy before you telling you what it means, and he disagrees with the other guy over there who also is telling people what it means, and they don't agree, you're kind of SOL, shit out of luck. So at that point, you're kind of stuck in a situation. We'll bounce back to the science in a moment, but I've heard the mud puddle one quite often. Hasib Qureshi, thank you so much for the super chat. I hope I pronounced your name right. Medical treatment rejection is not really a thing in mainstream Islam, but a common view has historically been rejecting organ donation due to beliefs of how the soul leaves the body.
This is, again, not a mainstream. It will be very, very peculiar sort of position to have. There is no basis of that in the Quran or Hadith, to be honest. So people who would do that will go out of their way to read something it's not there. Most of the Muslim world will fight for their lives, believe me, when there is an organ failure, because actually you would think so, yeah, because actually you can still, because if the soul is nothing to do with the body, right, and it's an immaterial thing, I fail to see why your kidney would have to play anything to do with the way you approach morality. Maybe the brain one day. They say if the brain transplant, there is no such thing, because we're talking about body transplant rather than brain transplant, because your brain is still intact and you've got a damaged body. So this is what you're trying to hold dear, consciousness in the brain.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, my friend. And then Crawford, thank you again. He said, I'm not accusing CF. I meant that here in the UK, Islamophobia is unfortunately rampant.
Well, so if we're talking about people acting out in a horrible way because there's a covered woman passing by and they start hurling insults, that is not cool. And he's not cool.
Wow.
You don't do that sort of thing. So we're as humans are against that sort of thing. Again, I'm a secular guy, which means I don't necessarily want to destroy religion. Maybe eventually, but through the right means of people being convinced it's not real and therefore abandoning it willingly at some point. But we don't need to rush it. Nietzsche and Karl Marx we're so afraid that religion will completely be gone. And Jordan Peterson spoke about the same thing, and a lot of people still in need for that, and maybe the world would be worse off because maybe they're not ready in terms of they're not well educated in science and other bits and pieces to fall upon when they leave their worldview. So, but if we can live in a world where religious people are reasonable, you can live in a country like Australia, like where I live. There's a mosque, there's a synagogue, there's a church, there's a strip bar, and you can go to either. And as long as you're abiding by the law, not a problem.
We know where you go. No, I'm just kidding. Dave, thank you for
the synagogue.
Sun in a Muddy Pool is copied from Alexander Romance. I didn't know that. Did not know that came from there. That's interesting, though.
Yeah, there's actually a reference. Yeah.
Oh, and Sid came back again. He said, Islam is a political system which has to be enforced by the state. Muhammad was a gangster who came up with this, and Quran is like a constitution. Gangster is a strong word. He was a gangster. No, but yeah, no, you had to have a military leader type. And, someone actually, I've caught a lot of flack. I did that interview with Bart Ehrman where I literally said that he was a warlord, right? I also think, if you want to be technical, Heraclius from that period, that was the king or the ruler in the empire, of course, the Roman Catholic Empire. He also was a warlord. They're fighting against Persia. Like, there was this constant war going on and battling back and forth. So when they take it that way, they're like, what? I'm like, no, people are cutting people's heads off. And they did this all the time. They were all bloodthirsty, in my opinion.
Yes, I think it was appropriate to the world. But then you would argue then, if he's trying to transfer a spiritual message, why would you need to resort to this sort of attitude? Like, so that when you get the Jesus and the Buddha type of attitude, you go, okay, well, I can see why these people, they might be still delusional, but I can understand why they are saying their message is not from this world or from this king. The kingdom of God is not from this world, or something of that sort. But to act exactly according to what the world dictates at that point, I can understand it completely in the context of human endeavor. But don't tell me then I came after I've spoken to God, because you're acting exactly the same way anybody would be acting in that kind of era.
It's an interesting point, right? Like, follow suit. And I've asked some of the academics, how much influence have the Roman emperor like Heraclius and the Persian Empire played on the role of Islam early on and its empire's growth? Because here you have what he's saying is Islam is a political system. Well, you're obviously going to want laws and have a political entity if you're going to try and rival the competing versions that are out there. So yeah,
but he's right. Islam is it wants a theocracy. The Sharia, that the best Muslim nation is the one that is ruled by the laws of God, and there are strict rules, several rules to cover everything. So yes, in Islam,
Judaism is the same way.
Yes.
So yeah.
Oh, they're so similar. Islam and Judaism are so similar.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. The whole Jesus coming along and doing something radically different. We have our excuses as to what we think happened. Cognitive dissonance, something may have happened here. But yeah, the fact that he's not picking up a sword and just battling, one can argue that that's radically different than what you would expect a Jewish Messiah to do.
I've got sort of a view on this one here. If you notice the similarity between Judaism and Islam because of their backgrounds, they're both nomadic, uncivilized nations. They're sort of moving around, looking for a source of food and water all the time. They're not settled. While Christianity comes from a rather settled civilization within, the Roman and it's got some Greek and Roman notes. The tragedy of the Greeks. and the storytelling of the Roman kings and gods. And therefore, the tone of the Bible, I mean, it's written in Greek after all, you know. So that's why I think it differs. It comes from a different type of source that is so different than those nomadic, tribalistic people.
Interesting. Constellation Pegasus says, I'm a physics guy also. Why would a god make a defective sun and universe? Eventually both will kill mankind.
Oh, but this one I can argue out of quite easily. Well, gods have created the world with an intention for it to end, so we can reestablish a new world order. So it will be replaced by a different earth, by a different sun, and that's the day of judgment. So you can easily opt out of that by saying, well, it was never meant to be eternal anyway. So it actually will play along with the narrative. But we in understanding from physical term, yes, our sun has got, like, I think it's 5 billion years to go. It's going to go into, it's not going to even have a supernova explosion because it's small. Our sun's quite humble. It's going to be a red giant and then a white dwarf, and it's going to go in a whimper, not in a blast.
Wow. Thank you so much, my friend. Paul Cherry said, and thank you for that big super chat, my friend. I appreciate it. There is a movement in the UK, like in academia and the media, where if you criticize Islam, you are being prejudiced, racist, and this can get you canceled. I met Allah a couple of times. His skills on the mic aren't all that. So you think he's talking about like rap or something. Yeah, I noticed that a lot of people are very careful and cautious, and some people are literally like, screw it, I don't care. There's David Wood, people like that are like outspoken, extremely, very outspoken against Islam. And while I hear some of the things they say, and I go, you know what, I do agree with that statement, right? If that's what they believe, that's ridiculous. Some of the things that David will say, I just feel like coming from a stance where you're not actually doing that to your own religion is a bit like, okay, you got some blind spots. You really do have some blind spots. But if we were to compare Christianity and Islam, right, in terms of which one's more dangerous and things like that, Christianity, most of all, has had its fangs dulled. Okay, it's not this political system that it once was, that was able to actually take over and rule kingdoms and destroy, like it once did, because it did. Today, I think that a lot of these Christians live in a time, like you talked about, where they're not running around looking for water, Hanney. They're in a civilized place and everything's good. They have freedom to do whatever they want. Their neighbor practices whatever religions they want, etc. But I'm like, I want to take a scalpel to everything and critically analyze all the worldviews. But I think Islam has been avoided by a lot of people for fear. I think there is that fear. They either don't know how to critically analyze it like what I do with Judaism or Christianity, or they go full-fledged and they seem, I can't read their mind, but they seem like they hate it. So they're either quiet and they don't say anything and they really don't like it, but they're scared to say something, or it's all hatred, it's all absolute, like hardcore all the way against it, and not finding a way to critically dismantle it. All you got to do is pick it apart. Take your scalpel, slowly cut into it. You start seeing all the fingerprints of man, and then you realize this is a man-made religion like all of the other ones. Clever people, but nonetheless, the fingerprints are there. You just got to be looking. I don't care to engage with apologists. That's the point. Because at that point, you're finding yourself getting into the nonsense you didn't want to get into to begin with, number one. And number two, the academics that are in the field who do know what they're talking about with Islam and the Quranic sources and everything, they're not going to want to talk to you. They don't want to get engaged in this conflict. They just want to go listen to the fascinating facts we found out about this palimpsest manuscript that we found and an earlier version of the Quran, or listen to what we found out in the text or archaeology or whatever. They're not interested in going, all right, Ali Dawah, what do you have to say now? Okay, these are the exact words dot for dot that went back to the prophet. This is the hill you want to die on. Anyway. I say that because I think Ali Dawah played a clip with me on it recently.
The UK has got a role to play in this. I mean, Christopher Hitchens used to be one of the strongest opponents to Islam in particular. He found it to be completely and utterly. He wrote a big piece on it, saying why it's completely ridiculous. And I think Charles Murray is one of the most outspoken intellectualists in the UK talking about Islam as well. It's an interesting era we live in at the moment, and it's not just about religion, that PC, the overly politically correct, and the cancel culture where you can be cancelled for trying to say something. I think Richard Dawkins had his Humanist of the Year award revoked because he talked about transgenders, and it was just discussing something. He's obviously not a homophobe, but he was discussing something, and he wanted to bring something out for discussion, and he was completely cancelled. So you cannot talk about that, and I disagree with that notion, because how the hell would you know anything about life or get into an engagement of discussion to find things out if you don't talk about them? You could still be wrong. I mean, Richard Dawkins could still be wrong and could be proved wrong in a proper intellectual discourse. And he probably would have changed his opinion. But to be cancelled from the offset, I think is completely wrong.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's happening all over the place. Constellation Pegasus's back. Thank you so much. Christians say one protein forming on Earth is 1 in a trillion. 1 in a trillion. We now know organic molecules are all over in space. Wonder why they don't mention it.
This is the sort of thing that I do on my channel. So I do a lot of evolution and debunking of the intelligent design, the Discovery Institute, the C. Meyer and the Michael Behe, the irreducible complexity of completely distorting science to suit their creationist narrative. Yes, the building blocks of life are abundant in space. We had a meteor falling in Australia. I think it's 72 or 73. Was filled with the building blocks of life. There's a biogenesis, which is a science trying to understand how life has emerged from inanimate to the animate. And it's incredible. I mean, intelligent design now is depicted as in Wikipedia as pseudoscience. That's the very first sentence is the way it's explained. I think the ID movement have lost already few cases in the United States trying to teach intelligent design along with evolution. I think the last one was Dover. Which a lot of Christians have actually give their words and expert opinion, including Francis Collins, I believe, the director of the Genome Project, who is an evangelist, by the way, and is understand evolution to be true. So this is completely now out of the question. We still need to know how life, though, when you put all these building blocks together, we cannot still create life. But this is only a 70 years old since the Meyer test. So it's quite new. It's quite new, and we're going to learn a lot more.
Yeah, I'm interested in doing that. Each person's a little different, so we'll get through these super chats here. We do have people down in the chat. I will bring on as soon as we catch up on these super chats, so please bear with me. David the Goliath, thank you, my friend. I appreciate the super chat. Judaism is simply mythology like Greek mythology. Moses, Abraham, Noah, Solomon, and Jewish prophets never existed and are no different from Hercules. See, I don't go that far. I definitely think there were some prophets that existed. John J. Collins goes into these. There are a lot of figures like Moses, I would say, is most likely a mythological character. Abraham, of course. Noah, absolutely. Solomon gets into a grayer area. So this is where I did an interview with Joel Baden, where you start further back, and we all can agree, even Christians, some Christians will admit, yeah, the Adam and Eve is mythology, and these are mythological stories. But what they said is mostly what you have is mythology that starts to gradually find its way into history. And There's nothing wrong with saying some of these prophets actually existed. At the end of the day, there were prophets by the dozen in each kingdom, and they were hired by kings to kind of be yes men often. Hey, are we going to win this war? Oh, yes, king. I beseeched the god Ahura Mazda, and he said yes, that we go into this battle, we're going to win. They were hired by kings to do this. This is just the superstition of the ancient world, but nonetheless, John J. Collins goes into what is a prophet, and he does this in a series, a 20-part series or something online, worth checking out. So I think we go too far when we start going, well, I found people that didn't exist, and they found themselves into the Bible. Therefore, everything is a fiction, like a comic book. Everything becomes non-historical. And I think that tendency, yesterday I was interviewed about this, potentially is like almost a fundamentalism on the other side. We love to jab at the literalist fundamentalist and point out how ridiculous it is that they think everything's literally true. And they themselves have some ground to stand on if they were saying, you think everything is literally fiction or not true. And we got to find a balance. We got to find a way to realize what do the scholars say? What are academics saying? And are we granting that? Are we being overly critical and not considering the reality that some of this stuff may be historical? That's my thoughts. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate the support. Ronnie S. Muslims are the biggest supporters of secularism and always support the leftist party of the host country when in minority, but want Sharia when in majority. What do you think of that?
Oh, I completely agree. So this tells you, so basically, in a majority country like Saudi Arabia or Egypt, where they are majority, they want Sharia because they want to have their laws imposed. But let's say Muslims in Netherlands and Holland or Germany, they know they're a minority, and the only way to protect their rights to practice and do their things, they suddenly secular, because secularism is the only one that sort of defends their right to practice their own religion. They would not want to have a different type of theocracy that is a purely Christian country, and then they are Muslims where they're completely mulled over. So suddenly they are secular. But as soon as they're majority, they say, we're now winning, and therefore, and they will reject secularism then at that point, and they will say, no, it's Sharia, it's our way or the highway.
I don't know enough about it to act like I do. And then thanks for that final super chat. And just to address this little question by ABDG and I, question for Mr. MythVision podcast. You don't speak Arabic. I do not. So how do you hate a book you don't know its content? So let me just address so you understand. I don't hate the book. I don't hate the Bible. I don't hate Christianity. I don't hate Judaism. I don't hate... I think it's man-made. That doesn't make you hate it. If I told you that, something is man-made, do you all of a sudden hate it? No, I hate the ugly things that are produced from people who believe in these things. That I hate. I hate the way women are treated in many places of the world. I love the way people find goodness in these things. I love that they can find those things. I think you can find them outside of these things. I don't just think, I know that these things are learned and is an aspect of us as just humans. But either way, I can find value and good things from people's lives, that they may be religious people, whatever. But as far as the things I hate, it isn't the books at all. I want to better understand the books. It's more the behaviors that develop from fanatical thinking of these texts. I mean, look, there's like British Israelitism and versions of Caucasian, white supremacy type groups that are claiming to be the lost Israelites. And they're using the Bible and the New Testament even, and saying Paul's preaching to Gentiles who are literally lost Israelites, for example. Well, does that make me hate the New Testament because I'm criticizing these people who are using this text to validate their supremacy and saying their race is superior? No, you wouldn't say I hate the New Testament for that. Even if I poke holes in it, show how human it is and how these are just people in a certain place that were superstitious, that believe these things. No, what I hate is the ideology of someone who thinks their race is better than everyone else, or they are better because they believe in something than everyone else. Those are ideas that I don't like. So trying to better explain myself, I hope I made myself clear. No, I want to read the Quran. I want to understand it. I don't plan on learning Arabic. I don't think I need to. I don't plan on going to that level of extreme understanding. There are academics who do understand this stuff, and I'll rely on them. I don't have the time. While people are going with space Hubble telescopes and stuff, I'm not interested in learning a language that it's just not my thing. It's not my drive. I want to be someone who explores many options. So hope that explains myself. And last one, and then we'll take our caller. How excited is critical faculty about the James Webb telescope? I'm excited to see how big the first stars were, if we can see them.
Oh, it's incredible. And this is the sort of thing that I'm hoping the future generations will be talking about more. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm like you, Derek, and Dr. Robert Price. We kind of reject the supernatural and the religious text, but I'm fascinated by religion still. People don't understand. Once you get sophisticated understanding, and we understand it to be a human endeavor, how critical it is for us to understand our past, how we used to think. These are manuscripts of our ancient psychology, how we used to think, how we used to see things. This is brilliant. That's why when I see people like burning the Quran or burning the Bible, I say, that is disgusting. You don't do that, because this is intellectual property. We need to understand how we used to think. This is our work.
And now there's some people who do this, and I've said the same thing you're saying right now. I just personally wouldn't. It's not my interest. But there's some people who feel like they're protesting to say, no, you act like this book is everything. And so I can understand their protest, but it's like maybe they're directing it at the antagonists that are treating them wrong or whatever. And they don't mean all Muslims, but by effect, you're then causing every person who didn't have anything to say about you to all of a sudden take offense as well. And you're kind of saying, screw you. And most of the Muslim world then feels that way. Not all Muslims think the same. Not all Muslims are the same. I have Muslim friends. Mind you, they're not fundamentalist. They're not, I mean, there are people who probably say, hey, I'm your friend and I'm a Muslim, but there are people who are actually my friends and are Muslims, and they're not fundamentalists. Because if you're a fundamentalist, you take this so seriously, I probably can't be your friend in your head. I'm an enemy. You see what I'm saying? So that's the problem.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. And there's one thing as well, if I were to recommend to people, because that position of hatred, I understand when people leave religion, they feel a little bit sort of angry because they feel like they might have wasted some time. They might have wronged people because of their beliefs. So they're upset with themselves. But don't stay in that position for long, because that is going to have a repercussion on you. Eventually, you're going to need to move on and reach a place of self-content, being happy. And once you get there, you'll be able to read the books and the writings in a completely different way and be in peace with yourself. Very, very important.
Real quick, just to address a couple chats before we get the super chat. Someone said, laugh out loud intellectual. It orders my killing as an ex-Muslim and LGBT person, and you call it intellectual. So here's what I was trying to get at, Hanney. And I don't want to butcher your last name. There are some people who are protesting that like we're not allowed. They like you weren't supposed to burn these things. Now, I guess you and me aren't coming from a traumatized or this kind of like we're living in this protest type of state where others are. And so while they're saying, no, I have the right to do this. You see what I'm saying? Like, let me pull it up here. I don't know if Can might be misunderstanding me a little here, but just because you have some Muslim friends does not make what is written in Quran. So yes, so here you have, for example, not all Muslims are maybe following what the Quran might be teaching in some ways, or they're reinterpreting it. But like some people feel like they have the right, they want to be able to do this, and then burning the Quran somehow makes them feel like I don't know, like their protest is valid against this book that caused them harm or something. I don't have that. You see what I'm saying? Like I don't have that, and I wouldn't care to do that. I would like to have my copy so I could keep studying it to kind of expose the humanity behind the thing. That's
Yeah.
me.
I just need to put this in perspective, because I think the gentleman might have misunderstood us. And we did not mention the word intellectual. I was saying it's a human heritage. What I was trying to refer to, if you understand the text to be human, we've written it, we thought, or we kind of thought these were divine words, but they were not. These are our own writings.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand them in the context so we don't repeat these atrocities again. And the only way to do that is by not hiding them or burning them, because we're going to end up repeating the same story again. When you see the movies like Mississippi Burning or Amistad by, the Gene Hackman and, all these sort of racially motivated sort of movies where it shows you how horrible they are. Sidney Poitier, who departed us quite recently. We need to, if you don't understand your history and hide it away, you will probably end up repeating it. You need to keep these things at sight so you would know this is where we used to come from, and this is what we should not repeat again. So it's understood in that context and not revered.
Yeah, it's a protest thing is all I was getting at about the Quran, because some people felt like, no, I should be allowed to do this. And they have that right, in many of these free countries to do it. So that's their call. I just personally am not interested in burning the Quran, though I know it says some things that I don't agree with. But the same goes for the Bible. I don't go to the local bookstore to buy a Hebrew Bible to burn it because it says, to kill and stone a homosexual, a man with a man, or to, kill and stone a fornicator, woman who cheats on her husband, or, whatever. I don't burn my Bible, but there's a lot more, I think, going on in the world. Like you said, the track record that has happened in recent history, just with the extremism that we've seen. It's not Islam, but it has become I guess media and everyone has been showing that Islam has a lot of that.
And Derek, how different are we going to be from the Catholic Church, who had a list of prohibited books, or the Nazi regime, who burned Sigmund Freud's and Albert Einstein's books being Jewish science? We cannot do that. We cannot allow for this to happen again. We these things need to be highlighted, and we need to study them quite well so we don't repeat them. I don't think it's any helpful to become those who we disagreed with at some point.
Thank you. Paul Cherry said, and thank you, Paul. Appreciate the super chat. There was old Qurans found in a Turkish mosque and are different to the modern version. Also, a lot of the Quran is plagiarized from the Greeks, or that Allah gave Muhammad the revelations about the moon. It was Anaxagoras. I can't even say this. How do you pronounce this?
Anaxagoras.
That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah. Thank you.
Look. One of the things to understand about the Quran and Islam, it's always helpful to understand the biography of the person. So Muhammad, we kind of comes to the scene. You get some stories about when he was a child, but very similar, very obscure, similar to the Gospels. But suddenly you jump into when he was 25 and gets married to this 40 years old widow who was very rich, Khadija. And he started working as a merchant with her, managing her caravans to Syria and Egypt. We're talking multiple camels, exchanging goods and what have you. So this guy has traveled for 15 years. Remember, the revelation didn't happen until he was 40. So for 15 years, he was traveling to different countries. He would have heard the stories. And you think, what would merchants do? You through the desert. It takes weeks and weeks. You got to tell some stories, and you stay overnight in villages where people have some fire, and we'll tell some stories. That's what we do as humans still. And he've learned a few bits and pieces. Plus, Khadijah's cousin Abu Waraka, he was a Christian priest, and he's the one actually that discovered that Muhammad, when he came running to Khadijah, said, "Oh, I think I might have seen something," and that was Gabriel, and he was actually horrified. He was shivering, and they had to cover him. Kind of makes you wonder, when the angel of God appears to a man, you think a feeling of peacefulness will be the one that is overwhelming, not complete fright.
Well, there's stories in the Bible where they're terrified and thought they died, actually. So this could be a motif lifted from the
fair
Bible.
Enough. Yeah, that's fair. That would be one.
Yeah, there's one where Samson's dad and mom saw the angel of the Lord, and he's like pinching himself. Am I alive? I'm dead. I am dead. Like, he's terrified by the angel of the Lord. So one more super chat. Ronnie S said, Islamic supremacy is worse than white supremacy because white supremacy was not revealed to a prophet and codified in a book. White supremacy is derived from colonialism and is not enforced anywhere, but Islam is. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, do you know what? It still has a place in religion. The story of Noah after the flood, when he got drunk, to save the world. Reminds me of the movie Bowfinger with Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy when he saved the world in a movie. And he saved the world, and he gets drunk on wine, and his bum was bare, and the sons were. Well, I think one of them was laughing. He cursed that son, and guess who? I think it was Ham. And that's the godfather supposed to be of the brown-skinned people.
That's actually a misinterpretation.
You reckon?
Oh yeah. That's a definite. So
what is the interpretation of it?
That ended up becoming what people were interpreting as that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that's not its initial intent. The point is that became the interpretation, of course, that darker skin is cursed, and you even get this down to Joseph Smith's ideology with Mormonism.
Correct.
And the white and delightsome and all that. So there is definitely this supremacy built into biblical interpretation of some of these groups. Mormonism and its origins are built off that. The Indians had sinned in the past. That's why they're dark. There's a lot built into that. But
the American Civil War, the North had the Bible and the South had the Bible, and both were sort of advocating certain verses in the Bible to advocate their position about what.
Yeah, and I mean, even today, there's still this sense of ethno superiority to the Jewish people. They are a better race of people, according to some, right? Some would say that. But you get canceled for saying things like that because I'm just simply reading what the Bible is saying. This chosen race of people that were less than anybody are special beyond all the peoples of the earth. And it's just biblical, right? Going off the text. And aren't Muslims treated as the best of all humankind in their book? So it sounds like it's just like a religious thing, it seems, that's built into many of these religions.
I think it's biological because actually when you dig deep into the same religion, the Jews will have the different type of Jews. Are you Ashkenazi, which is the European and the fair-skinned, or the Sephardim, the darker, sort of the Middle Eastern or Moroccan or Iraqi Jews, or the Flaja, the Ethiopian Jews, the black ones. And they're treated differently. Islam is the same. I think it's an inbuilt biological evolutionary situation. It's called xenophobia, and xenophobia is the fear of people who look different than you. Right. So imagine if you're a tribal in the hominids, and there are people approaching you who look different than you, dress differently than you, you would tend to fear them because they would definitely, or most likely, they were trying to raid you and take your possessions. So we develop over a period of time fear, xenophobia of those who don't look like us, and we still have it to date. If you go to a party when you're not invited, or sorry, you're invited, but you don't know people in there, you'll find yourself suddenly attracted to those who would speak your language or slightly look like you, or any familiar faces that you would know in the party. We still do this to date.
Makes sense. Ronnie, thanks for that super chat, my friend. Brings up all sorts of ideas, and thanks for all the support. All right, we're going to bring on one of our guests here in the bottom. I apologize for the long wait. And then after these, we're going to wrap things up here soon. So the first one is Z. Welcome to MythVision. Z, you're on. We can hear you.
Hey, yeah, how you doing, guys?
Good, good. I just set my timer for 3 minutes. Just feel free to ask away.
Okay, can I ask your guest? He used to be a Muslim, right?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. And if you don't mind, how long were you a Muslim for, and how long it has been that you have left Islam?
So I was kind of cultural Muslims for 16 years, the first 16 years of my life, and not a very practicing one. And then I got really into Islam for about a year, and then left it.
Okay, and my final question, and what was the main sort of rational and logical reason, not emotional,
Right.
that caused you to leave Islam?
Sure. I don't make decisions in life based on emotions at all on anything, apart from adopting a puppy or a cat. These are the only two or finding my wife. These are the few reasons that I would apply a bit more emotions. But for me, leaving Islam was completely purely based on logic. I think at the beginning you might have not been with us because I've already spoken about these.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I came late.
Yeah, that's all right. So hopefully you can watch again from the beginning. But very, very quickly, it started with moral problems, sex slaves, the treatment of women, the treatment of non-Muslims, and then moved on to the scientific bits and pieces where there's supposed to be information about the external world, and they were not consistent with science.
You have 1 minute, Z, if you wanted to make a statement, and then.
Yes, I was gonna ask him. I mean, we are told as Muslim that God is the reason for more morality. So if you don't have a belief, I mean, how can you talk about morality when you have nothing to grounded, to something?
Okay, that's interesting. I've had a couple of episodes about this on my channel, and actually, if it's called the divine command theory. If God calls a thing to be right, like the Israelites killing the Amalekites and ordering them to kill them and save no one and keep the virgins for themselves, according to the divine command theory, that becomes good because God says so. And if God says so, that makes morality arbitrary because that's based on God's will and mood. But if morality, if something is good despite God or outside of God's existence, then God is not necessary or needed because what's good is good regardless of God's existence. I argue that morality is an evolved notion that connects humanity all together. We knew about morality way before the Old Testament. It's an evolutionary necessity. This is how we organize our dealings together as a human race, and we agree on certain rules of engagement. The United Nations Human Rights Declaration has got a better version of any sort of morality, way better than the biblical morality or the Islamic morality. If you compare the two, and the latter is completely human endeavor, I find the current version, which can be still improved on, is way more superior than the morality of the Bible or the Quran.
So Z, go ahead and make your final statement. I have a couple more people waiting down in the chat, my friend. And thank you for being patient.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for your time. The example, I'm really sorry you gave, I believe it was from the Bible, not from the Quran. Regarding
they're all. I mean, when I talked about sex slavery, that's in the Quran.
I wish I had time. I'm sorry.
Maybe, hey, I will do this again, and you can always, like, I'll have other people on, and I'm sure they'll feel the same way as well. And feel free to call in. I mean, that's why I do this, is I want to allow the conversation. So thank you so much for calling.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Z.
You have
Thank
a good one.
Thank
Bye. All right, I'm going to bring on our next one. I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes, and I appreciate it. So with that being said, welcome to MythVision.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Hanney, is that right? What is like the top three things like that made you like leave Islam? What was it?
Right. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to keep repeating myself. Looks like the same questions being sort of asked over and over again. So I don't know, Taha, did you hear my last response to the previous caller?
Yeah, you said like the morality, right?
Yeah, so the moral issues, the scientific issues, there's some historical inconsistencies, there's a lot. Plus, there's a lot of logical problems with the way God would have chosen to convey his message, his insistence in conveying his message to humanity through language rather than thoughts. Have cast a lot of doubts from me, because there are always issues with the. You write a word, you write a sentence, and I bet you if 10 people read that sentence, they will understand them in 10 different ways, and that's the problem with language.
Yeah, what I would say is just, I mean, if you believe in God.
I can't hear you, my friend.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. I wanted to say, like, if you believe in God, you believe in a personal God. You also believe that God would send some sort of revelation down that would guide people, and yeah, that's how. I mean, it makes sense that we would have revelation written down by people later on. So, what do you think?
Well, you can believe in a God and not the revelation. You can have God of Spinoza, but you talked about a personal God. Okay, if it's a personal God, then we have the two biggest problems against that kind of God's existence, which is the problem of suffering, aka the problem of evil, which has never been answered properly. And there's two versions of it: the logical problem of evil and the evidential problem of evil. The logical problem of evil have been attempted to be answered by Saint Augustine of Hippo, and I think it answered a couple of things. But the evidential problem of evil, where we talk about gratuitous suffering and extreme suffering, has never been answered. And you've got the biggest one of them all, the divine hiddenness problem, where God chooses to completely cover himself, yet claiming to want to have a relationship with us, and then reveal his message to us through very strange ways of books in certain period of time when there were no camcorders. All these miracles floating around, splitting of seas and flying donkeys, and choosing a time in history where none of these can be recorded. Imagine the splitting of the moon miracle of the Quran that happens today. Mind you, even earlier, or slightly later, 1100 years ago, there was a supernova, which is an exploding of a giant star. It was actually completely mentioned in the Chinese culture, and it was full writing of it. And a couple of other cultures have actually noted the event down, where the sky is lit for 2 weeks because of the explosion of a giant sun. How come there is absolutely zero mention of any civilization or any nation citing the miracle of splitting of the moon? It's crazy, things like that.
There is actually a mention by some Indian king of the splitting of the moon. But you have to realize it didn't last that long, maybe a few minutes. I don't know. But regarding the problem of evil,
Do you know what source that is
Yeah,
in, just
I
so
was
I can
gonna-
actually look it up? That's in
I
the
was gonna-
7th century.
yes,
Indian
I think there
king.
was, yes, I think it was like the Indian king of Kerala or something like that.
And is this in Indian sources, like over in India, or is this something that is in Muslim sources saying that even in India they saw or something?
I think you can find it in an Indian source.
Okay, I'll definitely look into that. Thank you for
Okay,
mentioning
look
it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, one more, and
regarding-
then I've got another caller on. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Regarding the problem of evil, a lot of people always mention God's two attributes, which is mercy and power, like all powerful and all merciful. But they always don't mention that God is also all wise and that He knows everything. Like there is always a good reason why He would allow evil in the world. There is a greater good that you don't know, that I don't know, that neither of us know, that He knows. So we can't really judge an infinitely wise being with finite.
But Taha, don't you think this is a cop out? Don't you think that a dictator governing a country, by making that claim to start with, he will be completely on it. You can't really have a conversation if you come and claim that everything that's going to ever be done, even it's horrendous, if it's horrible, it's absolute evil, there's some goodness that can come out of it because you're an all-wise, omniscient God. How it's unfalsifiable. How do you get around that? If you made that claim to start with, you're big into question at the end.
Another way to put it, Taha, would be: imagine I was telling you this about Marduk. What if I told you that the god of the Mesopotamians, which is far older, was actually the god who does all of this, and he had a plan for all the bad things that happened, and he hides where no one knows. Like, we can't prove. You have people like us on Earth who doubt the existence of Marduk, and we don't know if there really is a god named Marduk who really is ruling this. But people who follow Marduk are saying, no, listen, he's all wise. Marduk is, he knows what he's doing. He knows better than you. And I say, how do we know that? And you can't really prove it, but you believe it because, well, there's a text that says that Marduk says these things are true, and I'm all wise, and I know what I'm doing, and I do what I will, and I planned everything. I know all things. I am the creator, etc. And people like Hanney will say, well, when we talk about God hiding, right? You might go, well, God can't show himself anyway. He's spirit, or he's beyond our comprehension. Yet he has angels intersect into human history, supposedly. And why not have them like here at a local temple down the street where this angel rules, and we know these angels are real? These are things to like, there's always a way to get out of anything. And I feel like
maybe these people would take these angels as gods and will start worship them.
What's more plausible? What's more plausible, though? That they might take them and worship them, or that, well, we don't see them because it's possible they don't exist. And this is what we've been saying. In the ancient world, everyone believed in superstitious stuff. They all believed the gods. Asclepius used to heal all over the Roman world, and people believed in this. I just think that's kind of a cop-out. It's like saying, look, I am a millionaire. Where's your $1 million? Well, look, man, I had it in the bank, and, well, show me. Well, I can't show you, but I know it's there. And you're like, I need to know that there's $1 million in the bank. And I'm supposed to believe, or you're supposed to believe that I'm a millionaire, but I can't actually show you that. But I have a receipt that I can show you that says $1 million, but my name's not on it. There's no real evidence to show it's my $1 million or something. It just says $1 million on it. It's
and Derek, I just want to add as well, and notice that Taha started with a presupposition position. He said you first have to believe in a personal God,
Right,
and then
right.
everything falls in place. Well, the burden of proof still exists. Okay, prove to me that God exists.
and that's the problem I think
that's
we're
why.
having.
Yeah, that's why I said, like, if you believe, like
Right.
for argument's sake, I mean, it would make sense if that God would give us revelation. And
Oh
then
no!
these revelations
If there was a personal God, that's what my argument to start with. He would have. I can find way better ways of communicating with humans than this way of sending books that have contradictions, that are in a certain language that can only be understood by a certain tribe. It's so problematic, and they keep failing. If you're a Muslim, you know his words have changed in the Torah and the Gospels, the Bible. Why would he insist on doing the same story again, knowing that it failed the first 2 times?
people changed it, to be honest, not God.
Well, but isn't he omniscient? Doesn't he know the shortcomings of people?
That's why he guarded his last revelation from any corruption. And we can get into that, but yeah, that would be a long discussion. But
I just think it's an interesting question to ask is, the way that the communication is, to me, is definitely a problem. And that goes for all of these things. Like, the more I dive into the Bible, because I've studied the New Testament and the Hebrew Bible quite a while, even the understanding of translating it from its language, you're losing the meaning of words. Like, people really need to learn Arabic to get down to the bottom. And even then, they need to understand the dialect of that particular Arabic in order to really know. Because I've talked to, some of these academics that I've had that I'm really good friends with, whether they be Haitham Sidki and Marijn van Putten and other academics who are Quranic scholars. They're like, it has a Quraysh type of dialect. And if you don't know that, then you're going to miss the meaning and the points and what it's actually trying to say in many respects. It's a small tribe at one point in the 7th century AD, and it's supposed to be a universal message for all mankind. And I would imagine that a universal God that is so beyond us, unimaginably beyond us, could have done quite a better job, in my opinion, than what we see. And right out the gate, the most holy, true religion of all is immediately in civil war with themselves. They can't figure out who the leader is going to be. The caliphs are fighting. Ali was thinking he was going to be next. Shia Sunni split. I mean, chaos has broken out in the world's #1 true religion, according to Muslims. And they look at me, and you got to wonder why I don't believe this is true. And that's literally the tip of the iceberg of things that can be presented that make us go, well, we should question. We should really be more cautious and question, is this true? And for me, I started to realize that Christianity and Judaism and things like this weren't true. But the third religion that uses all the stuff that I know is mythology, or it's not really true, and that it says, well, they messed it up. Man changed it. And in my head, I'm like, where's the evidence of that? Show me where that has been changed and that there is an actual form of it that wasn't. Anyway, I'm rambling. There's a lot of stuff.
Derek, it's intrinsic to the method of transfer. It's intrinsic to language. And that's why when you have a superhero or a meta-human, they will use telepathy. Telepathy will always be more superior than language because you're transferring thoughts. And a direct thought will always be, because that's the base unit of your ideas. So if there is a God, the telepathy is always more superior because it cannot be misinterpreted. You don't see a telepathy situation where the guy is on the receiving end saying, "Huh? I didn't get that." You can see that in language. We had comments where Derek and I were looking at the comment right in front of us in plain English, and we couldn't understand what it meant until the person verified it a couple of times.
Yeah. But Taha, thank you so much for calling. You've been a very friendly caller, and I really appreciate
Thank you.
Please
Yeah.
call back again when we do this again. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Derek. Yeah.
You ask good
Like,
questions.
Yes,
yeah,
I agree.
Thanks, Derek. Yeah.
You have a good
Thanks,
one.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Awesome. Let me catch up on these super chats. Friendly Muslim down in the chat. You're next, so don't worry, my friend. Sid Dave, thank you for that super chat earlier. I couldn't get to it. We were just having fun in the show. Is it Khadija? Yeah, Khadija finances Muhammad's cult activities. The wife-beating verse would not be in the Quran had Khadija lived long enough. She would have taken Mo to task.
She was a powerful woman, all right. She was very influential of her time. She was, and it tells you, it begs the question of, there's a big claim that Islam has given women a lot of rights, and we're talking about a pre-Islamic female who was rich, was calling the shots. It was actually claimed to be that she asked Muhammad to marry her, not the other way around. So we're talking about a pioneer here. Like, she was like ahead of her time. And I kind of agree. I think she would have not. And by the way, out of the 13 wives that Muhammad and the many concubines that Muhammad had, until Khadija died, he never married another. It was just her.
I was going to say, after reading that book, After the Prophet, there's a statement he said to Aisha one time, because Aisha thought on her high horse she was his favorite wife. And we know that's the case. But his favorite wife after Khadija. Okay, so, this is a clear issue. He said to her when she said something about that old lady, and he said something to her like, don't talk. Like, he didn't want to hear what she had to say. That woman, he actually loved her like beyond any other one. So we don't know if he would have married another woman in his life at all. He might have only stayed with her.
And remember, Derek, he was an orphan. He never had the mother as well. So imagine that. It actually still happens to date. We're talking about a wife-mother situation.
Yeah.
And you've got the Antigone and the Electra and Oedipus complex, where there's always that you're always trying to replace your mom somehow.
Thank you so much, Sid. Appreciate that comment. And David the Goliath, the story of the Indian king seeing moon split is made up by bogus Islamists in India. It is as good as believing Jesus and St. Thomas came to India. Yes. Interesting. I like, that's why I wanted to write it down. I like finding stuff like this out, David. Thank you so much for the super chat. But I love to find this stuff out because I will get into it and see when, where, how late are these sources, how reliable are these sources, and why would this even be written, right? Is this coming from another Muslim later on as they conquer in this region? These are interesting questions I think anyone should ask, but I understand why a Muslim would not. And they would just want to accept it because it validates that feeling inside of, I have the truth, my religion's right. It's like someone saying, your mom's wrong. No, my mom is not wrong, because that's my mama. There's something about the religion. I see it with politics. I see it with other things as well, that like, you can't be wrong. You have to be right. And there's no way that many people could be wrong. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Derek, I've done an episode about the repercussions of the moon splitting in two, or sort of, there's so much attached. The weather conditions and a lot of things are so dependent on the moon. The moon is created by a meteor that hit the Earth about 300,000 years when it was old. And actually, the moon is a split part of the Earth that eventually gathered by gravity, and it had its own orbit, but it used to be part of Earth. And the reason why we have a 24 hours day and the stabilization of the seasons is because of the moon.
Right.
The moon is so important to Earth.
Yeah, there's ancient lore that the dead were buried on the moon. Okay, like this is stuff like in ancient texts, right? Be interesting to find that out after going there. Hey, someone's been buried over here. What's no, but it's just interesting to hear how we've thought these things through. Miss Jill, thank you for the super chat. Was a very active evangelical for years. Started secretly deconstructing a year ago, and found so much hope and support with your channel. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I seriously do. That's like my goal, right? To try and make everyone feel that love in the community that we had, of course, when we were in the faith, and to also not take it and vilify those who are still in the faith, right? It's kind of hypocritical. Like, I was a drug addict for many years. Can you imagine if I judged all drug addicts and said, you idiots, you just stop doing drugs? I know how hard it was. I know that I couldn't just stop. It was so hard. So finding a way to love and be patient and try to endure and all of that, it's very difficult, especially when you still have people in the faith that are forcing it at you. That's when it becomes difficult. When my mom is always calling me, trying to convince me or trying to tell me, Derek, you know, in your heart, you know, she'll try to hit me with some emotions and stuff. And I'm like, Mom, I don't want to talk about this because it'll upset you. And I love her. So I'll even say prayers for my mom, like on purpose. Like, she'll say, will you say a prayer? And I'll do it for my mom. And she'll go, no, do it for yourself. And I'm like, Mom, it doesn't hurt me. It's not like if I say this prayer, I'm going to believe all of a sudden. But no.
Derek, do you follow the works of Ricky Gervais, you know, the English actor?
No, but I know he's funny.
And he's a big atheist as well. You got to see his stuff because
Really?
he always, in any of his TV series, he brings atheism to his series, always. Right. But always bring a conflict. Like there's a movie called The Invention of Lying, where people didn't lie, never lied. And he went to the bank and he needed some money. And for the first time, he uttered the first lie ever. And the banker said, how much you want? He said, well, $1,000. He didn't have the credit. And the guy gave it to him without looking at his account because nobody lie. And takes the money and says, shit, I can lie. I can do a lot. And start to say, well, I'm speaking to God and all that sort of stuff. But it was a situation. And then he told people the truth. He says, there's nothing, guys. His mom was dying in the movie. And she was a believer. And she said, oh, we're going to go to heaven. And he didn't believe at that point. And she said, oh, I'm going to see you in heaven and everything. Do you believe in it? And this is where at that point, he was very, very strong atheist. He chose humanity over conveying his conviction. So it's very important to stay human.
So I need to watch it.
Yeah, watch Ricky Gervais. He's always on Lawrence Krause's Origins podcast.
Okay.
Follow his stand-ups. He kills it. He's a very strong atheist, but in a very funny way, but very human as well.
Well, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Miss Jill, thank you. And you can always email me, message me. Thank you for the support and keep on watching because there's more to come. Constellation Pegasus, is this moon split story big enough to have a separate video on? I've never heard of this. I think we could do a video on this whole split moon, or at least incorporate it into a video where there's a part of it we can actually deal with this subject matter.
I think you can. Yeah, you know, I was doing an episode on David Hume because David Hume talked about, he's got a big chapter on miracles. I think you can talk about miracles. And then you have the splitting of the moon, because there are other miracles like the Isra and Miraj, where the Burak, the flying mule, goes to the seventh heaven, and which borrowed from Pegasus. There's actually similarities in the two stories. So there's some miraculous stuff in the Muhammad narrative as well.
Yeah, I love looking into that stuff. One more, and then we're bringing on our friendly Muslim. Ronnie S. said, Islamic fundamentalism is responsible for radicalization of whites in Europe, Australia, and Hindus in India. People are feeling threatened because of Islamism, and radical groups are rising because of this. Interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I mean, any type of radical thoughts, regardless, whether religious, nationalistic, are always going to be a threat because they are very polarizing, and they usually kind of aggressive and maybe violent, on occasions. Yes, there is a problem. Muslims, unfortunately, tend to live in ghettos. So whenever they migrate, they tend to try to create a country within a country and don't sort of mix up with the new culture, and that's a concern. however, and again, being a little bit protected by an overly PC culture that we live in at the moment, where you cannot say certain things. But I think at some point you gotta call a spade and say, well, you cannot say that. You live in our country now, and this is how we roll. This is how we do things. We're democratic, and we don't separate and segregate people. It's not as a bigger threat as it's circulating. Some countries are way worse than others. In Australia, is not a big threat from my point of view, but in some other countries, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I'm hearing Holland could be one because of the amount of people in there. Maybe France, but not in Australia.
Right. And I have heard things from India, of course. That's a big one.
Oh yes, that's always.
But I don't know anything about it, and I couldn't tell you. But I do know that there's radical Hindus.
Yes.
And they're violent as well. And so it's not just, Muslims that are doing that, but you kind of wonder if both are fueling the fire for each other. And I think that's what Ronnie's trying to say, is that, like, you've got one group that is going all the way the other way because one is extreme in one manner and one is extreme in the other. And they're opposites, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But again, two wrongs never make right. So if some other community is going to respond, you cannot say, oh, well, they're justified because, it wasn't their fault. They have to act this way. You still have to act responsibly. So I still hold white people who, like the Aussie guy who killed the Muslims in the mosque in New Zealand. You've heard about this massacre, Derek.
I heard about that, yeah.
Oh, that is horrible, and that was disgusting, and that's still wrong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All of that's wrong. Yeah.
Yes.
100%. Ronnie, thank you for the support, man. Appreciate it. And yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to do, is defang all of these. I think if people start to realize these are man-made, then a lot of this can be deflated, and humans can start waking up, giving less power to these ideologies that strengthen this kind of crazy, in my opinion.
Yes. So, agreed.
Hold on. No, Hindus are, I think they mean the same, peaceful. I'm not talking about all Hindus either. So I think they're dog biscuits. I think you only caught a little bit of that. So I'm saying there are radical versions, politically radical Hindu groups. Just
one of the things I like to do, I like to point out logical fallacies, which is a default in the construction of thoughts. Generalization.
Heard me. That's why I said that.
Oh, but wasn't he saying that no Hindu is peaceful?
He says no at Derek. No Hindus are. I don't know if they're saying that none of them are peaceful. Either way, wrong.
I think yeah. It's generalization, and generalization is always going to be wrong. Yeah. It's logically inconsistent.
Either way, if you go too far, either way, you'd be wrong.
Yes.
If they're all peaceful, or if they're none are peaceful, either way.
I'm next.
Let me go ahead and bring on our friendly Muslim. Welcome to MythVision. I'm sorry for such a long wait, my friend.
That's okay, Derek. It was quite interesting to hear the dialogue going on. So it was a.
Well, did you have a question for Hanney or any statement or anything? I just set the timer for 3 minutes.
Oh, I'll make it quick. Okay, so in terms of you, Derek, love the work you're doing.
Thank you.
I appreciate that you look at different aspects of Islam. It's been done before also. So that's not a bad thing. What I would suggest wholeheartedly and sincerely is, on certain topics, it would be good just to sort of narrow it down, like the wife beating verse, because that needs 10 minutes to really explain it. Look at the scholarship behind that one verse, for example. And so those sort of things you can take. Again, I could send you a link and give you information as the breakdown as to where the word developed, how it is misunderstood, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Splitting of the moon, for example. I know you mentioned in another video that you had seen Sheikh Uthman, and he's on YouTube. But if
is he the guy who said that he was like, "Look, I'm not getting into this with what's the guy's name?"
David Wood.
Oh yeah, okay, so that's a different guy. I know who
Yeah,
you're talking about now.
okay.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
So I mean, I can send you the link, but he does a 30-minute video where he completely investigates it and goes through the Indian sources, goes through the Islamic sources, goes through, okay, this museum is holding this information about it, and he gives you a complete investigation. So he is on YouTube, Sheikh Uthman, Splitting of the Moon, and what happened in India. So that gives you a complete breakdown of every source that is available in regards to it, because he did the phone calls, he called up the different places. So that would help you sort of contextualize the actual event itself. Okay, so we did that. We did the wife beating. We did the Derek appreciation part. Okay, great. So
I'll tell you where to mail the check. No, just
I'm interested in hearing an argument though, because all what I'm hearing so far is refer to this video or refer to that link or chat. Do you have an argument about the? I'm particularly interested in the beating of women. How do you understand it?
Okay, so I'll just read out a section or the breakdown of it. So it's from the. This is also confirmed by the lexicon expert below, where we note that darba has been rendered as to turn away from, leave, forsake, abandoned, avoid, or shun. And again, it breaks it down. So it is obviously, mediate is the first step. Second step is obviously to part. And then, yes, the word is beat. But if you think about it rationally, so I've tried to mediate with my wife. I've then parted my bed, and then all of a sudden, I'm just going to give her a smack. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So, when you actually look at the context of what you should be doing,
But
then
here,
can I just finish? So, following on to that, if it is to hit, but it's to not do any harm, so you can't leave a bruise. You can't. There are conditions as to what can be done. Which is not to make any.
But hold on a second here. You've claimed two things at the same time. You've said the third stage was not to hit, but now you're saying it's to hit, but not to inflict serious harm. Which one is your position?
There is okay. So let me break that up into two pieces, which is again why you do need a full breakdown and how it's broken down and where the different sources are.
Okay, I know it by heart, but so. First of all, it talks about if you fear a woman's disobeyal. So fear, not a woman would disobey you, not your wife would disobey you, but fear the possibility, the potentiality of her disobeying you. You're allowed to do these three stages, these three steps. The first one is to preach to them, is to advise them, which is cool.
Wait. And also mediate. So if you look at the Prophet Muhammad, when he had an argument with Aisha, he then called for a mediator in that process.
No, hold on. What is? Do not put extra words. What is the Arabic verse? Read the Arabic verse. Fa'azahunna, right?
Yeah, we're not. Again, this is where you can go Quranist only view, or then you can go Quranist
No. Yeah, no. We're doing the Quranic verse. We're reading it out as it is, as it's written, and it's uttered supposedly by God. The Arabic word here is used. It's one single verb that means to advise them.
Okay, but now you've also gone back to your first argument where it says it is the Quran and the Sunnah, which is the life of the Prophet Muhammad. Correct?
I've never brought up this.
No. At the beginning of this video, you said that it is part of. Okay, so Islam. When you both and Derek were talking about either Quran or Hadith, or if you go on Quran only, then you need the Hadith or the.
No. But why would I do that? Because it's a Quranic verse and it's quite clear. It does not need any further explanation. There are three clear and distinct stages. One, that of an advice. And it's the Arabic verb that has been used is al-waz, fa'azuhunna. That's an advice. And the second one is to desert them, probably in bed, fa'haguruhunna, right? And then you're claiming the third one to be very similar to the second phase, which is stay away from them, which is exactly the second one. Why would God use?
No, I disagree. I disagree. So again, if we look to turn away from them, forsake them, abandon, so then you would start a divorce process then also. So again, then you would start the process of divorcing someone. That's your wife.
Al-darb means divorce.
No, I'm saying after the part of turning away from them, then you would
Yeah.
then consider
Which
ending
is
marriage.
so that the Arabic verse says the final stage is called darb. Show me where in the Arabic language the darb means divorce. The word talaq, which means divorce, it's mentioned in the Quran.
No,
Why would
absolutely,
God?
you're right.
Yeah. So
You're
why
right.
would
I'm not
God
disagreeing
use
with
it?
that. But again, this is where we're mixing up two different issues. So again, I would love this is where you actually need to visually see the scholarship behind the actual verse.
I've seen it, and I've seen how it's been interpreted and explained by the very old, like Al-Tabari, and how it was explained and how is it mentioned
But I've got
and
different
verified in
sources.
Sahih.
As a Muslim, growing up, let's say within the last 20 or 30 years, if we did look online or we looked on videos, etc., it was always that this was just a striking or a turning away. Or again, there is an argument.
No, it was never turning away. The word turning away, it's got a similar. It's not. It's called adraba, not yadrubu. They're similar, but they're not the same.
So what would be the benefit of just giving your wife a one smack, basically? Because it is once, right?
Well, it doesn't say one. It say hit them. When you say
strike them.
Yeah, strike. Where does it say single time?
But it doesn't say repeatedly.
Then it's open to.
This is the nuance. This is where again. This is where you're saying, "Oh, well, I've done this. Well, cool. Let's have a look at that. Let's break it down. Let's have a look at both sides of it." And again, I don't want to argue. I just want to exchange knowledge.
No, I understand. But friendly Muslim, I'm gonna contrast this with, because there's a verse in Quran switches the chairs, where the woman now is fearing the disobeyal of a man, right? And what happens then? Does she have the same 3 stages? Do you know the Quranic verse?
Again, this is where we have to go, like, really break down these one sentences.
Okay.
No, I just
for the listeners and the viewers. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. For the listeners and the viewers and Derek's interest here, there's another verse where the positions are changed, and then if a woman fears the disobeyal of a man, she has only one option: to bring forth the 2 members of the families so they can make up and advise both of them. She does not have the same 3 stages rights the man has.
Okay, so now we're going to see, again, this is where you need to have a nuance of understanding the overall process. Because I can't believe that we would, again, when we're intellectually looking at these things, we're just taking the one verse and going, right, this is all it means. You know, because when we're looking at Jesus, for example, we're going, oh, where did he say I am God? And we're breaking it down to that one statement. And so we look at things as a whole. And all I'm asking for are these sort of discussions and dialogues, that we take a subject, dedicate half an hour to one aspect of looking at an argument for it, and then dedicate another half an hour to looking at the arguments against it. That's all I'm asking for.
So let me ask you this. Let me just ask an honest question. Is it possible, and I'm not even ruling out, I'm going to investigate this stuff, and keep looking. I really appreciate your comments. And I like that you're friendly, because we can tell you're friendly, even though I think there's the possibility, there's the defense, there's this apologetic, right? So is it possible that it does mean what Hanney is saying, and that it means you can beat her? Now, it doesn't say beat the crap out of her. It's not saying that. And it's not saying just tap her. Okay, it's not saying that either. It's just saying this, and people are running with it, and people are doing really, really extreme things with it, and some people aren't doing things with it, and they're interpreting it how they want. But is it possible that you could be wrong, and that this actually is indicating beating her?
From what I've looked at, no. So that's the whole thing about it. That is where you've looked at. I enjoy looking at different scholarly arguments about a subject. Right. So I love what critical for fact. Sorry, my friend over here has stated about what he's done and what he's looked at it. And I also would like to, even if I email you and go, Derek, here, can you have a look at this work about the topic? I'd be happy with that. And whether you want to take that on board, that's fine.
I will definitely be glad. Feel free to message me. I will look at it. I will keep him. Like, here's something that you got to know about me, just so you understand me a little better. I am very cautious on people who have arguments to defend. Their whole goal is to try and be an apologist to protect the religion. When Jesus said, for example, you should pluck your eye out, right? Some people say, well, it's just allegory. Okay. How do we know that he wasn't such an apocalyptic preacher who said, if you are sinning, if your hand is causing you to actually sin that might cause you to go to hell, cut the damn thing off, right? Like, now Christians do not take that and say, well, you know what? He meant what he said. No, they always say it means something else. It's not the ugly thing that it sounds like. It's always something nicer. And that's because they live in a time where that's something that it's not acceptable. And I wonder if that might be, and I just say that, I'm not sure. I'm saying I'll look into it because I know that we live in an age where if we were in the West, let's say, saying this, and this says you could beat your wife, or like Hanney said, what right does the woman have? She's got to call the mother and father-in-law and her mom and dad and have them in. She doesn't really have any other rights but that. That doesn't look good. That does not look good.
And Derek, and I want to add where my problem exactly with this verse. My problem is not all of that. My problem is as follows. The Arabic language uses a verb that is most attributed to hitting, scourging, right? And this is the evidential problem of evil. Why would God use such a verb where he's supposed to have access to all of there's a word for divorce that is different than that word. There's a word for dessert that is different than that word. Why would he choose a word that was the reason for wife beating for centuries, where women are beaten days and night in the Arabic world? And when they go to the police station, they've been told, go home, that was just your husband.
So to give friendly, what he's saying, even if you were right, it goes even deeper. Because now you have God's message is not understood clearly. And this is the problem that goes even deeper. And so, but do me a favor, email me. I'd be happy to look at it. And
that's all I ask for, because I mean, a lot of points that he's just made are addressed in this article. I'm very much about looking at both sides of an argument, and just looking at both sides and going, okay, cool. Well, this says this and this says that. Can we see where where the middle ground is on here?
And I'll message you in the private chat. So once I pop you down, I got some super chats I'll jump on. I'll message you my email. Feel free to email me. And thank you for coming on.
Yeah, but very last thing, you are appreciated, definitely. I love your conduct with Tovia Singer. Love Tovia Singer, big fan, even by Erman. So we do appreciate the work that you're doing. But just speaking on behalf of Muslims, we would like that we just see both sides of the picture on a particular verse, for example, or a particular subject.
I think that and just on the record, while I have you on here, I think this is a good point to bring up. I get a lot of Muslims in the chat who say, why aren't you having Muslims come on? Why aren't you platforming Muslim apologists to come on and preach the message because they're right and all of your people are wrong? Okay. And I'm just telling you what I hear. I'm saying that's not what my channel's about.
You're absolutely right. So if you got Ali Dawah for one particular section of this, he's not really going to be good. If you got another apologist who has specialized in a certain verse, a certain subject, and just specifically talk about that subject, he's not preaching. He's just saying, right, this is what we understand from it. These are the sources we have for it. This is why we looked at it this way. And they will even quote outside sources.
I don't bring apologists on my channel for Christianity.
I get it. I don't think apologists, this is the only problem I have, Derek, is you put them all in one group. And so you have like Adnan Rashid, who is he's very in-depth on historical Islam and how it existed within Judaism. And so there are different elements of people that can specialize in one set that aren't apologists. They don't want to preach about Islam, but a specific topic, let's have a solid conversation about it. Yeah. And that would be my point. That please don't group them all as the same, because not Ali Dawah, hijab, etc. They're very different.
Yeah, I'm not interested in those guys. Like, I like Khalil Andani, for example. He's a PhD Islamic scholar. He is a Muslim, but I like guys like that who are academics. I'm not interested in like apologist types. I there's a certain level where they use a historical method, and they know that in historical method you don't grant miraculous. You don't make those claims and things like that. Those are the kind of things I'm interested in, and if they specialize in something, I'd be more than happy to look into them and investigate. I just don't personally get into the apologetics, but if you send me it, I will look at what they say. I will look at the other sources. I will see what other people say, what's really going on, and is this 21st century eyes interpreting this that in the 7th century they wouldn't have batted an eye. They'd have said this is totally normal. Because the woman functions this way, that is the way it is here in the 7th century. I'm not worried about what you think in 1400 years from now. She is my property. She is mine. And there wasn't anything wrong. And I'm not judging the 7th century, because if I was there, I'd have probably done the same thing. I'm not judging it. I'm simply saying, is that what it actually means? And I want to investigate it that way. So send me what you got. I'm sending my email in the private chat here. Don't leave yet. You know what I mean? Make sure you email me. I'm interested. I'm
here to the end. Appreciate you all. Appreciate the work and appreciate the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, friendly.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And just one last thing to add to this point here is that's the work of scholars. When you sort of study something scholarly, you look at the big picture. If the state of women in Islam is revered and is really nice position, you have that one-off verse, and well, that's very odd. That doesn't speak to the rest of the language towards women, and therefore you might then say, well, I'm gonna intervene here and I'm gonna try to make it match the whole message. But when you have consistent issues with women in Islam, sex slavery, half of a man in terms of witness, half of a man in terms of inheritance, a lot of other issues, then it's kind of consistent. Well, why, so you can kill their husbands and children and take them and have sex with them the same day this happens. And Muhammad did that, by the way. But you can't beat them. I mean, it's consistent that you would beat them because they're position.
Thank you so much for that, Constellation Pegasus, in the super chat. Shapeless Man channel on YouTube for the splitting moon information. My head's splitting. Always something. I don't know. What's the Shapeless Man channel? Is that like a YouTube channel?
Yeah, I think.
Shapeless Man channel. I'm going to look it up real quick. Shapeless Man. Oh, let me space that. Channel splitting moon. Sorry. All right.
Sounds like a parody to me or some sort.
Yeah, I don't know. You're going to have to email me, Constellation. I don't see it. But seriously, thanks, man. I appreciate that support. Blue Green, thank you for the super chat. Hi, Derek. Hate to mention other people while you're interviewing other people, but can you interview Fishers of Evidence from YouTube? Yeah, I've actually emailed him. Of course, I wrote you in the chat, but I've emailed him before. We talked about potentially doing one and never followed up because he just doesn't do those. But I always enjoyed his videos, so I'd love to have him come on. And I'm reminded to send him another email and see about having that happen. So thank you for that support. Appreciate it, Blue Green. Going down here. Constellation's back. Friendly Muslim is saying what I argue about. Why can't God write a simple verse without people fighting over what it means? Let me ask you this. Do you think people fought over this verse in the first couple hundred years of Islam? I don't think.
No. Of course, because according to that time, I don't think there were human rights activists at that time saying, well, beating of them. I think it was looked at and it's like, yeah, that's what we do anyway. I mean, that's kind of normal. And think of a desert culture. Men are very dominant. I think this sort of thing used to happen without a problem. It's only now that we know it's a problem. We're talking about women only had the right to vote in some countries mid last century. Where
It still
so
can't vote in some countries. Yeah.
I know. This is crazy, and being beaten with a cane in Afghanistan, fully covered. There's a guy walking around behind women and hitting them with a stick for showing like an ankle or something. So we're still long way, but we know now that to be wrong.
Yeah. Thank you. Sid Dave says Islamists love Tovia Singer and Bart Ehrman. Thank you for the super chat. I would have thought that they didn't like Bart. I know Tovia is pretty chill with a lot of people, but I didn't think they'd like Bart. But sounds like they do. But I don't know. Bart, that interview he did with who was it? Muhammad Hijab or whatever. Did you ever watch that interview? By the way,
he did one with Muhammad Hijab. I thought it was
Muhammad Hijab
Jordan Peterson.
No, that was after.
Oh, it was after. My goodness.
Yeah, it was. It was like, oh my gosh. I thought it was kind of funny what Bart was saying. The phone book doesn't contradict. That doesn't make it from God. Yeah. And he was making funny little points there. But
Sid is trying to say is it's called, and I think there's a beautiful German word that encapsulates the meaning. Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is made of two words in German. Means Schaden means somebody else's loss or damage, and Freude is you being happy for somebody else's misery. So when a Muslim turns up and another religion is being bashed, they love it, and that's why you get a lot of Hindus, appearing and to slag Muslims off because they really hate their guts. Sometimes they say, this is our chance now to get some.
Well, I think they were trying to get Bart on their side. At least he was. And so, and Bart, he's just not convinced at all. And so he tries to be polite, but he's like, no, I don't believe. Sid Dave, thank you again. He said, please invite Zakir Naik. Am I saying that right? Naik?
Yeah, this guy is so funny. Have you heard of him?
I might have seen him. I might have watched a video where he was on it because, I've watched a lot over the.
He's an Indian apologist, but this is the guy who is very renowned for a medical doctor in India, stands up and talks about evolution. And he said in his Indian accent, in a very funny way, that, well, it's only a theory. If it's a fact, it will be called the fact of evolution.
Oh my god!
and people were clapping like in the hundreds of thousands. Brilliant! How come I never thought of that?
No, he didn't. He says he will recite you all the chapters and the numbers. Modern day con artist who is popular among the Islamists but never debates. Thank you, Sid. I appreciate it. I don't know the guy, but I think I probably have seen him. I'm sure if he's famous, I'm pretty positive I've seen him in discussions online somewhere. Constellation said, I thought that caller mentioned a Shapeless Man channel. Haven't checked it out yet. I thought he said Sheikh Uthman. That's what I wrote down. Sheikh Uthman. And I think he's
That's what I thought he said after Sheikh Osman,
yeah. Yeah. Sheikh Uthman is what I understood. And he's going to email me, I'm sure, some stuff. So if you...
But Derek, that splitting of the moon have to go along with a conspiracy as well, that NASA is aware of the situation and they're keeping a lid.
Yeah, that's, well, all you got to do is ask the flat earthers, they'll tell you.
And that's why when you go to the supermarket, there's a shortage of super glue.
Oh my gosh.
Because, they need a lot of it to put it back together.
Ronnie S. said, Allah is Muhammad's fake ID. Allah always magically shows up in the Quran to rescue Muhammad and solve his family problems. Muhammad must have laughed his off in private. I don't know. I think, I think we might be mischaracterizing some of these people. Like, for example, I think the guy probably really believed in what he was doing. But like, if you were to ask 1,000 Christians what they believe, and they all say Jesus, you'd think 1,000 Christians believe the same thing, but they don't. They all have a different conception of Jesus and God and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised. The guy, I don't think that this is a con. I think he actually believes in what he's saying and all of that. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the super chat.
No, I think he's onto something. It's not as blatant as it is, but there is a very, very famous hadith by Aisha.
Okay.
Because
we got someone in the chat, by the way. So
sure, saying that somebody saying to Muhammad, Well, it's very, very strange, Muhammad. I see God really hurrying up to have Quranic verses coming to exactly suit your desire. Aisha, there's a hadith by Aisha telling Muhammad that, and that was on the back of Muhammad.
I see what you're saying.
Changing some rules,
That makes sense.
and suddenly some Quranic verses came exactly to match the rules that he wanted, and it was actually to do with marrying other women.
So this is like when Joseph Smith says, "Oh, by the way, polygamy." God actually had, this. These multiple marriages were divinely something that God said is what we need to practice, and it's a revelation. So making the revelation of God fit what he really wants desire-wise.
Exactly. And conveniently, the revelations came back again to abolish polygamy and black people from entering the Church of Mormonism. It's like, is that angel sort of coming down to just see what's convenient and what's in vogue and what's fashionable, and coming back with divinities that sort of reflect the current affairs.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something to definitely. I didn't know that that's what Ronnie was trying to get at, so I was trying to understand it. I apologize. All right. Thank you so much, Ronnie, for the support tonight, and Constellation, all of you, everybody, blue, green, you name it. I really appreciate it. Final caller, and then we're going to wrap things up. We've been going for quite a while tonight, and morning for you and night for me. You're in Australia, so the last one, and I'm setting my timer. I don't know much because I know how conversations can go, my friend. And with that being said, welcome back to MythVision.
How you doing, Derek? How you doing, guys?
Hey, welcome back.
Hello.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, I was just gonna ask you about the last beating verses. Yeah, like you said, can it mean when it says strike them? Does it mean, like, I think in my opinion it means that you strike them with a warning for a divorce, because the next line says if they don't do it again, then you don't have to take measures. And then the next surah says, 35 says that if they want to go ahead with a divorce, then bring the families together. So I think it's a strike them with a divorce. It doesn't say like strike them to beat them. Like the previous caller said, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but again, my argument stays the same. The word divorce, talaq, it's mentioned. We know it's in Arabic. It's mentioned in the Quran itself. There is actually a surah called Al-Talaq, and we know the word exists. Why would God choose a word that doesn't convey the immediate meaning? And we will have you and I to sort of, and a lot of victims will suffer through the.
No. The victims, no, the victims don't have to be any victims to suffer, because Muslims have to follow the example of Prophet. Prophet never beat a woman. So if the Muslim beat woman, that means that they are going against the example of the Prophet. So no,
what's the president? The president is it?
The president is very easy. I'm going to explain to you. The president is very easy. Quran is revealed in a certain way that you have to rhyme the verses, and this is sometimes they are used. Allah uses words which we don't use in everyday life because we don't speak like the Quran speaks. Allah tells us stories.
1 minute.
Like, for example,
are you a native Arabic speaker?
No, but this is what everybody says.
I'm a native Arabic speaker. I can tell you the word fadrabhunna is a word that we use today.
Yeah, but you're not understanding me. The way the Quran speaks is not the way we speak in everyday life when he tells stories. It's a rhythmic. Okay.
Are you telling me because God wanted so much to keep the rhyme of the verse that he chose a word, he chose poetry and structure, linguistic structure, over the destiny of hundreds of thousands of women? Are you telling me that? I
told you again, there is no destiny of thousands. Prophet Muhammad never beat a woman. We had an example of the Prophet when the Aisha is accused of adultery. He never beat her. He just went away from her. He turned away from her. So anybody who beats women, they are going against the word of Allah and the words and the deeds of the Prophet.
Can I ask you,
no need for that.
What happened to the Quran and the angel Gabriel when Hadithat al-Ifq happened, when he suspected Aisha of betrayal. What happened to the Quran and the words are supposed to be revealed to the rest of humanity?
What happened? Tell me.
Why he stopped?
When Aisha was accused of adultery, yeah?
Yes. Why did it stop?
Okay. What do you mean, why did it stop? Are you telling me that every day the Prophet received a revelation? Show me where it says that, and I will leave Islam. You're making a ridiculous claim.
No, it's please look it up. Please look it up.
Show me one hadith that says that every day the Prophet received a revelation, and I will leave Islam. The Muslims, they had wars every single day. Sometimes he received the revelation once a month, maybe once in 2 months, once in 3 months. We don't know. So you cannot make that accusation. That's a
well, hold on. We know. The Quran was revealed over 23 years.
Exactly.
When he was at the age of 40 and all the way to the age of
my friend.
60.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can I ask you a quick question? See, when you know Arabic, you speak Arabic, yeah?
Yes, I'm Egyptian as well.
Perfect. In Quran, we have stories which are told, like, for example, Quran tells stories about the Pharaoh, about Moses speaking to each other, yeah?
Yeah.
He uses... Do we speak in the same... when we speak in everyday, like you and me, we are speaking right now, why are we not speaking like in a rhythmical way, like singing, a little bit like a rapping or singing? Why we are not doing that? Because nobody does that in real life. Only Quran does that. Do you agree with that?
And what does that tell me?
This is the reason why Allah says in Quran that there are some surahs which are very hard to understand, because Allah tried to preserve this. This is a language, divine language.
Now, it's my turn. How do you're a Muslim, right?
Yeah.
How do you read the Quran?
What do you mean? How do you read the Quran?
How do you read? Do you read the Quran in Arabic, or do you read the translation in English?
We recite it. I read the translation in English, but when I go to the mosque, we recite it in Arabic.
Okay. Do you understand
Quran
what you recite?
To be recited. Quran is meant to be
hold on. Just calm down.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you recite the Arabic words, do you understand what you're uttering?
Some of them, yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
What's the point? You made no point.
You're uttering words that you don't understand.
Revealed. I say the way. No. I said the way. Yeah. So I understand when the way is explained to me. So what's the point? You made no point. I said the way it was revealed in a rhythmic way.
It's like abracadabra. Like it's like
but you agreed with me. You said it's a different way we speak. A different way it's revealed. Recitation. You just agreed with me. I don't know what you mean.
Let me ask a question. So when you
said
when they spoke in poetic way, which I agree, the language is definitely that way. In fact, a lot of the scholars I interview mention this. Do you think every day, all day long, they spoke to each other in a poetic, like, hey, bro, you coming down the street so we can hang out with each other and meet? And if you don't mind, I'm not going to beat every time I meet you down there on the street. Do you think that's what they did every day? They lived their life as a poetic way of communicating? Or is that this certain type of literature that is trying to kind of give a poetic, divine, what would you call that? A pedigree? It's very poetic. It's certainly the style. It's something that I think is common in this time. That's my point is like, do you think Muhammad always and people who spoke Arabic at the time talked to each other that way, or is that just in this literature in particular?
Derek, thank you so much. You just made my point. This is what I was trying to explain. You said it in a perfect way. They never spoke like that. Nobody speaks like that in the real life. You have a normal conversation. That's the beauty of Quran. When Allah says something, He doesn't say the words that me and you were speaking. He extracts the meaning of that, and then He tells it in a poetic way. That's the beauty of Quran. Everything in Quran we say is spoken from Allah. We don't say, for example, you have stories in Quran where it mentions the pagans of Mecca talking to the Prophet. We don't say that. Nobody in Mecca said that, oh, look, I'm speaking in Quran. Nobody said that. Even the Prophet never said, oh, I'm speaking in Quran, because nobody understood that. Everybody understood that this is the word of Allah. He's extracting the meaning of our words. That's the beauty.
So let me get us back on track. before we go, because we've been going for a long time, I must ask.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. And I get what you're saying. There's even poetry in the Hebrew Bible where they're writing these particular songs,
Exactly, you're right.
these stories. So this is the question I have. As that relates to the whole beating your wife, are you saying that if we're reading this in a poetic way, it isn't concluding that you're actually hitting your wife? You're saying it's concluding that you're supposedly hitting her with a divorce rather than hitting her. Is that what you're suggesting?
Exactly. You just
Okay.
Absolutely. You said it better than me because I sometimes struggle. Can I say something about you, Derek?
Yeah.
You're very fair, and that's what I like about you. Last time you had what's his name? I think you get things quicker than some of the Muslims. Last time you had the apostate prophet. Remember, I called you in. And this is the funny thing. You made my point when you were telling him like about the Abraham, because apostate prophet he didn't even understand my point. He said that I was trying to explain to him that there are two phases of Islam. One is like you're born with a fitra, that inner ability to understand God. And then you know what he said? He said that no, in Islam, in order to be a Muslim, you have to say the Shahada and you have to say La ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah. You have to mention the name of the Prophet. But you made a perfect point to him. You said, but Abraham was a Muslim according to you. Just destroyed his whole argument, but he didn't even get it.
I don't believe. I mean, look,
he
at
is
the end
very
of the
weak.
day,
I'm telling you, that
I don't know.
I think this guy is smart.
I don't even think he existed. I don't think Muhammad. I don't think Abraham existed. But I mean, I don't. At that point. But look, I don't know. You got one more thing. Ask away, and then I got to let you go because I'm tired, man. I've been working all thank you day.
Guys. I enjoy your shows, and I like to think, and I like this guy, this critic of faculty. I think he's very smart. I've seen some of his shows, but apostate prophet. I don't want to be rude, but apostate prophet has no brain. He's weak, very weak. I can destroy him in debate.
So bring your last point, and then I'm gonna let you go, my friend.
My last point. Well,
one more point. Say one
thing,
and then I gotta let you go.
I only started watching when you were talking to the last caller, so I apologize for that because I was busy working and stuff.
No,
so
biggie,
I don't have
no
anything else.
Well,
I thank you for everything. I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you so much, man.
Nice meeting you, my friend. Critical.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Stay safe, my friend. Thanks for calling.
You too. Take it easy, man.
Bye. All right. Look, what would you like to say as we're leaving out of here, Hanney? I really do appreciate you coming on, hanging out. You're very calm, and you have patience, and you know quite a bit. So,
well, look, we have to, and this is not easy. Shaking people out of we're talking about worldview. A lot of things are predicated on. This is so important. We shouldn't take it lightly. It's very emotional. People invest a lot in their beliefs, and therefore we should be always respectful. We talk about ideas and never the people. I feel the people are victims of certain creeds, and therefore I'm helping. I think I'm helping. I don't think religious people are stupid. I don't think my IQ has gone up 10 points because I left religion.
Right.
I think I was just wrong, and people can be wrong and can be right later on, and that's fine.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, by the way.
So it's a conversation. It's very interesting conversation, as long as we're not hurting each other. I'm interested in the epistemological point of view. Did it really happen? I want to know. Is there really a God? I want to know. I'm very curious about these questions, and I will still ask them to the very end, because I think it's a very dynamic situation, because there might be something that I don't know exists that will be revealed to me in the next 10 years. I'm keeping my mind open. So far, I'm reaching the decision that the Abrahamic God cannot exist. He contradicts the laws of logic. So not just he doesn't exist, he cannot exist. He's the married bachelor that we all talk about. It's breaking the law of identity in logic. However, there might be a different type of God that we're yet to understand or know. So I'm keeping the conversation going. Thank you.
Yeah, no. Sid said, and thank you, Sid, for showing up tonight. Despacito. Despacito is better than Quran, he said. It is in Spanish, became popular all over the world. People memorized it. So Quran recitation claim is crap. So it's this. I mean, look. At the end of the day, it's a deeply held tradition, and of course, I think it has a human motivation, right? People want to memorize it. In fact, that's the whole thing is poetic. I think for memorization and recitation, and it is part of their whole thing is orality. This is stuff that I learned from some of the experts in the field that I didn't know anything about till I started delving into this, and I actually enjoy learning about how did they think and how did they communicate their sacred text. And there's something poetic about the way that they did these things. But of course, Muslims see that as a miracle. I see that as just genre. I see that as genre, and I see that as this has really impacted people on a very deep level, just like biblical stuff does. People have like Bible, memorization of text and verse and things like that. But this is more like song, so you can memorize it, I'm sure, a lot easier.
Sorry to interrupt, Derek. There's a comment by Marcus J about the Arabic, the argument of you don't speak Arabic doesn't work here. Do you mind showing it, because I need to address a very important point?
Marcus J, how far is it down at the bottom? New
towards the very bottom, yeah. The argument of you don't speak Arabic doesn't work here.
Sorry, Marcus J, got it.
That's the one. Okay, the context of this is there's a lot of Muslims who can't speak Arabic, Malaysian, Indonesian. These are the following miraculous claims of the Quran. It's poetic. How do you know a text is poetic? Because to be a critical literary of a text, you need to understand the syntax and the construct of it. Can you, Derek, tell me if a certain Japanese text, if it's a poetic or not? If you don't understand Japanese, obviously.
No.
It's impossible. It will not work. So that here's the poetry gone out of the window. So you ended up with two things. Read the translation in your local language, which is always distorted. And the miracle of the poetry of the Quran will be out of the window unless you're a native Arabic speaker, because the translation will never do any text justice. Nietzsche's Zarathustra, when it's translated in English or some other language, is not the same as when you read it in German. So that's one out of the window. But also the fact that you are in prayers and in the mosque, you literally, so it's very akin to the 30 years war that's been fought between the Protestant and the Catholics, because Martin Luther wanted people to understand the Bible in their own language, because they were uttering Latin and stuff that they could not understand. And that's exactly the point I'm making here. You saying words that you don't understand yourself, but behold it dear and be holy, doesn't make it comprehensible. So here's my point. Hopefully I've driven it home this time.
No. Yeah. I'm with you. I guess you nailed it better than I did in terms of explaining that. And all I'm saying is I see human effort. I see a collective effort as humans to, especially these particular religious humans, to do so, especially if they're part of the same empire. And this empire is on the rise, and the development of this religion is taking place with the success of conquering that is taking place. So yeah, it's a major impact, but there's so much more we can do. And I plan on having you back. I really do. I want more people to go. And there I go searching. I was looking for the shapeless man, but there he is. Sheikh Uthman, I think it is. Make sure you go subscribe to Hanney's channel, Critical Faculty. I'm going to put that in the chat right now. And also when we get done here, if you don't mind, can you actually comment, and I'll make sure I pin your comment to the top, so people, as time goes by, will be able to see your comment, go and harass you or compliment you. We encourage either one.
Well, in half an hour, I'm going to be live on my channel with a PhD in philosophy, talking about whether science have made philosophy obsolete. If anybody would like to watch that. Yeah.
Ray, you're not lying. I have split the moon now. I'm going to show that here in a second. Just, you know what? I might as well show that right now. We might as well let everybody see what happened here. This is Eyewitnesses.
It's
Now
pretty cool.
Let's see those sources come up all over the world. Seriously though, go subscribe to my friend Critical Faculty. I deeply appreciate everybody's support of people I have on as guests, especially him, because the guy is really putting his heart out there. He loves this stuff. He's into science, which I'm into as well. He loves to get into the mythology of things and discover the human element behind them. So I look to him and realize that I have another brother who's similar to me in thinking in those ways. Finally, if I may, with a shameless plug, I have so many videos. I repeat this all the time, and I mean it. I work very hard, and I mean very hard. Today I edited 7 or 8 different videos. I've been doing lots of recordings. There's a lot of work that I do. If you want to see all of this material, hundreds of videos, you can go there and support me that way if you really want to. If you want to see this stuff, you can also message me. I see text messages here, so you could personally private message me. And also, you might have a question for an academic that I interview in the future. And I do interview scholars and ask my Patreons or my Patreon supporters questions to the academics when I go and visit them in person. So consider joining the Patreon. I just released, 9, 10 new videos. I've got hundreds up there that aren't made public. Please consider doing that. So, Hanney, any final words for our audience?
Oh, just want to really end with I'm so glad I've come across you, Derek. It was completely coincidental, and I think I found a very good friend. You and Neil, the things you guys do, and making information available to people who are busy or on the road, and they can listen in while they're driving their car, bring in all these academics, and the information is so good, but also the way you deliver, again, I've said it before, all this information in such a funny, light-hearted way. Life's too short. You got to enjoy life. You got to discuss things, take it seriously, but not too seriously that your face will dry up and you got to crack that big smile and live life, because life's too short. It's very important we discuss things, and I thank you so much for being part of the one race, the human race.
Thank you, brother. Love you, man. Really do. And everybody out there, I mean that. I don't care where you stand at the end of the day. I really do. Really do. Hold on. Constellation Pegasus said, I'm laughing at that. He's got me laughing with his super chat. And then Black Angel said, could you repeat it, Derek? I was asleep. Talking about the moon splitting. Oh, that's funny. Thank you so much for that. Damon Davis, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate the love, my friend. Seriously. And then Constellation says, last question. When will Derek start splitting hairs?
We do that every day. We do that every day.
Yeah.
Yes.
I should seriously, just for you, Constellation, I should just do this. Do like an opposite mohawk and just split it down the middle out here. And then you'll know I'm splitting hairs at that point. But seriously, appreciate it. And thank you for the dislike. H6845. Thank you, my friend. I always appreciate it. But seriously, I love you guys. Everybody. And let's do this again. Let's do it again, Hanney.
For sure.
Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, that we are MythVision.